Hello everyone, how are you? Today I welcome you to the first chapter of What If Naruto Were a Gremory Demon in High School DXD? Remember, if you want a second chapter, just scroll down to the comments section and rate the fanfic from 1 to 10. Now then, enjoy.
Prologue. I don't want to marry him. I hate that man so much. I detest him, Rias. Understand this once and for all. The commitment is for the good of our race. Doesn't my opinion count? Venelana Gremory, formerly Bale, sighed wearily at her young daughter's cries. How she wished her daughter understood what this commitment meant for the underworld as a whole. A small redhead entered through the corridor, his attention drawn by the shouts. Mother, what's going on here? Both Venelana and Rias turned their gaze to the little redhead. Rias huffed in annoyance. Now she had to put up with her annoying twin brother. Venelana smiled lovingly at her little baby being so curious. Oh, it's nothing, Naruto, your sister is just causing trouble, the usual. Venelana replied with a soft smile on her lips. Snorting with a half-annoyed look, Rias spun around. I'll find a way to break off that engagement, no matter what it takes. Finishing her sentence, the redhead walked away from the hallway where her mother and her annoying twin stood. Mother, what does Rias mean by engagement? Tilting his head in confusion, Naruto asked, staring intently into his mother's eyes. Your sister, as heir to the Gremory clan, is betrothed to the Phoenix family, an arranged marriage that both clans agreed to honor, but it seems your sister isn't taking the news very well. Venelana took her son's hand as she walked forward, followed by the redhead with a thoughtful look. I see, said Naruto with an annoyed expression. As far as we know, Naruto loved his sister Rias so much that he seemed to be a second Surzex, obviously because of his sis-con relationship. Rias sat on her bed, her face a mixture of sadness and anger in her eyes, watery from unshed tears. She felt anger toward everything, anger at her parents for the engagement, anger at the Phoenix family for the arrangement, anger at her twin brother. Yes, Rias Gremory was angry with her twin, or rather, jealousy. Yes, jealousy of her twin. Naruto, born minutes after her, was considered the younger sibling, and as the older sibling, she bore the responsibility of inheriting the clan. Her brother Naruto didn't have to deal with that responsibility, he didn't have to marry someone he didn't love, he didn't have to study himself to exhaustion. But above all, Naruto had the freedom that had been stolen from her. Naruto. Despite hating him, she loved him too much. Yes, she loved him so much that she wanted to marry him when they grew up. It was a complicated situation, she loved him, but at the same time she hated him, and that prevented her from showing the affection she truly felt. The door to her room opened with a small creak, and a dark-haired woman with violet eyes appeared before her. Akino, go away, leave me alone, Rias said, her face hidden in her white pillow. A sigh escaped the dark-haired woman's lips. I can't abandon Naruto-sama's sister, my king would be angry with me, Rias grimaced. She had wanted to make Akino her queen ever since she first met her, but her twin brother had beaten her to it and made her part of his peerage as a bishop. She couldn't understand why he had made her a bishop when she clearly should have been a queen. That angered her too, the fact that her brother had won her first peace was a source of endless frustration. I don't care, tell your king he's a fool. Rias said, her voice muffled by the soft cushion. Rias, I don't understand what's wrong with you. Why do you hate your brother so much? Akino seriously wondered how someone like her Naruto-sama could care so much for someone like Rias. She could understand that she was his sister, but the way she treated him didn't sit well with her. It was pleasing, no one should be angry with someone as beautiful and kind as Naruto-sama. Rias lifted her face from the pillow, raised her tearful gaze, and glared at her brother's bishop. That's none of your business, she replied with a small snarl. An exasperated look crossed Akino's face. Fine, I don't know what's wrong with you, but I'll let it go. Look, if you want to keep crying, go ahead, but don't take it out on your brother. Akino frowned at the redhead. Rias snorted, clearly not caring about Akino's words. I'll do what I want. Now get out of here, I want to be alone. I'm telling you, Rias, you'll regret it if you keep treating your brother like that. One day, Naruto-sama will start treating you the same way. Akino said nothing more and left through the door, closing it behind her with a cold stare directed at the redhead, who, for her part, mocked the bishop's words. As if that idiot Naruto would ever do anything like that, Rias thought with a small snort. Lying face down on his enormous bed, he closed his eyes as he tried to hold back his tears of frustration. 1 month later, Naruto walked through his home's garden, his calm steps leading him to a small tree nearby, where his twin sister sat, reading a book with her gaze focused while her eyebrows were furrowed. Sister. Naruto ran and hugged Rias with a huge smile. Ugh. Rias glared at her twin. Get out of the way, Naruto. You're a huge nuisance. Shoving the redhead with her hand, Rias pulled him away, sending him tumbling down on his rear from the force of the push. Come on, sister, don't be such a spoilsport. Sona-chan is coming to visit. Naruto exclaimed with a happy smile. Sona Citri would come by from time to spend time with Rias or with both brothers. Naruto loved her very much, she was a very dear friend to him, one might say. Who was her best friend? Well, at least I won't have to be in your repulsive presence. Rias stood up, dusting off her white frilled dress, removing the small amount of dirt from it. Naruto just smiled, inwardly feeling pained by his sister's words. He wanted nothing more than to cry because of his twin's harshness. Don't be like that, you know you love me, Naruto said, though he seemed to be trying to convince himself of it. Rias turned her face away with a small huff. That'll never happen. A light dusting of pink powder covered her cheeks. Rias. Naruto stopped talking, that was because of the arrival of a black-haired girl with glasses and violet eyes. Sona-chan, the redhead greeted her with a smile. Sona got a little pink powder on her cheeks. Hello Naruto, I see you're still using Japanese honorifics. The Citri knew of her friend Gremory's obsession with Japanese culture, it was so intense that he was even starting to use the honorifics used in that country. A playful smile spread across the redhead's lips. Heh, you know, Sona-chan, I really like that culture. Rias snorted instead. Yes, he likes him so much that he even made Akino call him by an honorific. A blush spread across Naruto's cheeks. Sona raised an eyebrow. Akino? One of your pieces? Sona directed the question to the Gremory. Naruto nodded enthusiastically. Yes, Akino-chan is my bishop and a great friend. Wow. Sona's serious gaze focused solely on the redhead's happy expression. Well, Sona, do you want to play? Rias asked, looking at the dark-haired girl with a slight smile that was returned. Sure. Naruto. The redhead looked at Sona with a nod. I'd like a rematch. Rias's smile immediately faltered, and Naruto's eyes widened slightly. Are you sure? I mean, you can play with my sister and have fun together. Naruto said, his expression nervous under Rias's gaze. Sona rubbed her chin, then shook her head. No, Rias is good at playing, but I want to beat you this time. You'll see how much I've improved, and the result will be different. Naruto sighed. Rias? He looked at his twin sister with a confused expression. Rias spun around, her expression gloomy. Do whatever you want, have fun like the fool you are. Naruto hid his hurt expression. Sona frowned, she didn't like how Rias treated her brother. Well, Sona-chan, do you think you can beat me? Naruto gave a rare, excited smile, trying not to think about his twin sister's harsh words. Sona gave him a superior smile. I'll defeat you, Naruto, she said with a dramatic, determined expression. They both chuckled softly before walking towards the mansion. They made their way through the corridors of the enormous structure, chatting a bit along the way. They stopped when they were in front of the redhead's bedroom door. He turned the knob and opened the door as Sona entered. Then the redhead went inside and closed the door behind him. Akino sat on the redhead's bed, lost in thought. She'd noticed their arrival because of the sound. Her expression softened into a happy one. Naruto-sama, it's so good to see you, and you too, Lady Sona, Akino said, her expression shifting to indifference as she addressed the Citri. Sona adjusted her glasses. Same here, Akino, she said, her voice as cold as ice. Oh girls, please don't start, Naruto said with an annoyed look. Akino smiled. Since Naruto-sama says so, I have no choice but to obey. Sona sighed. Let's get started, my victory is practically assured. We'll see about that, Naruto replied, going to a large cabinet where he kept a complete chess set. He took it out and placed it on a table with 2 stools. Sitting down, the redhead began setting up the board while arranging the pieces. Sona had sat down from the moment Naruto set up the board, and had been arranging her pieces with her gaze turning serious and cold. When it was all over, Naruto smiled happily. Let's see how much you've improved. He moved a simple pawn as if he were moving his pieces without strategy, just making simple moves. Sona adjusted her glasses, moved her horse while her calculating gaze turned to the board. Akino had a smile on her face as she watched her king having fun. The minutes began to tick by. Naruto had lost several pawns and was still losing, while Sona only had a few pawns left. But even so, Sona's gaze remained calculating. She knew what was coming as soon as Naruto made his move, and she was waiting for it. Akino just watched from the side with a curious expression. Naruto stared thoughtfully at Sona's face, her calculating expression remained unchanged. With a sigh, the redhead moved one of his last pawns. You're not funny anymore, Sona-chan. Sona adjusted her glasses. I won't fall for that again. Naruto's grin threatened to split his face. But you fell for the same thing like 6 times. A blush of embarrassment covered Citri's cheeks. Jay, just play. Well, I suppose there's no need to try and lead you into false hope anymore. Sona frowned. Try it, you won't beat me the same way again. Naruto's expression changed, his smile turned malicious, and his red eyes glowed with a demonic intensity. Let's play. He said nothing more as he moved one of his horses with terrifying calm. There he is, Sona thought with a slight shiver, that was the real Naruto's look. Carefully, he moved one of his pawns. Naruto's smile widened, almost as if his move had been anticipated. Naruto moved a pawn, his smile sending a small shiver down Citri's spine. Akino rubbed her cheeks, which were flushed a deep red. That was why she loved her Naruto-sama so much, his expression made her want to kiss him. Sona's expression changed, her calculating demeanor crumbled at the redhead's every move. Each time she moved one piece, Naruto was already moving another, as if it were all pre-planned. It was almost as if the redhead could somehow see into the future. After a few minutes, Sona rubbed her sweaty forehead, almost all of her pawns were down, leaving her with the same small number of pawns as the redhead. Sona-chan, show me how much you've improved, because if this is all, you haven't improved at all. Naruto said with a disinterested look, his smile gone and now only a cold expression remained. Sona's eyebrows furrowed. Don't celebrate just yet, she said, her glasses taking on a blinding gleam. Naruto snorted. I will, until you prove me wrong. Sona bit her lip, she needed to stay calm. If she lost it, Naruto would win without even trying. Naruto-sama. His movements are becoming more and more different from the previous ones. Sona thought with her eyebrows furrowed as she concentrated. Naruto's smile returned. Sona saw it and could do nothing but sigh. She knew what was coming and no matter how much she tried to avoid it, she would only delay the inevitable. However, he wouldn't fall so easily. Akino smiled as she watched the game. It seems you have improved, even if only a little. Naruto said with a smile as he moved his bishop. Sona moved her horse while adjusting her glasses. I could say the same to you, your movements are very different. Naruto laughed. You noticed, right? Yeah, I changed my play style. I mean, it's better to be unpredictable than predictable or to keep using the same moves. They said nothing more to each other as they continued their game. Sona lost more and more pieces, while she only managed to make Naruto lose another of his last pawns. Several moments later, Sona slumped back in her seat with a sigh. Checkmate. Naruto said with a small, amused smile. The Citri heiress smiled slightly. You know, I really enjoy trying to beat you. I know, the better you get, the harder I'll try not to be beaten by you. Sona settled back in her seat, adjusting her glasses. We'll know in the future. Naruto smiled with his palm under his chin, beside him was a smiling Akino. Naruto, you should stop making that same move. Sona stood up from the bench. Which one? Naruto also stood up, to lead your enemy to a false hope of victory, only to shatter their illusion. Sona rubbed her forehead with a small sigh. That's the fun part, seeing their devastated looks when they realized they were playing in the palm of my hand the whole time, just like I wanted. Naruto smiled, amusement written all over his face. Sona clicked her tongue. She had been a victim of it the first time they played and truly felt that he had been using her like a simple puppet, pulling the strings, before opening her eyes to the truth of what was happening by cutting the strings and leaving her lying there. That won't always work. Sona commented as she prepared to leave, pausing for a moment at the door, turning her face, and smiling slightly. But it was fun playing with you. He finished, then left the redhead's room. Akino, I'm bored. Naruto looked at his bishop with a small smile that gradually transformed into a devilish look. Himejima knew what that meant, and she swallowed hard. And Naruto-sama, I don't think training until I die is the best thing. She might be a masochist, but she truly felt that Naruto was being too sadistic, training her until her bones cracked, her legs gave out, her arms felt like her blood was boiling, and her breathing was so ragged she felt like her heart would stop. A demonic glare was his response. Please, be gentle, Akino said timidly as a blush covered her cheeks. Naruto took her forearm as he opened the door with a huge smile. Kindness is a waste of time. End of prologue. Chapter 1. A dead stare was what she received. Through those empty red eyes, Rias felt a chill run down her spine, small drops of sweat trickled down her forehead, but the empty, emotionless stare she was receiving did nothing to calm her ever-increasing fear. Rias. Her name came out in a voice devoid of any emotion, as if it were a corpse speaking. Swallowing hard, Rias nervously watched her brother. I am sorry, but I won't change my mind, she said, afraid because she didn't see even a hint of change in the redhead's expression. A sigh escaped her lips. I hope you're doing well. With those words, she walked past Rias without looking at her for a second, her slow, calm footsteps echoing down the hallway. Rias's lips trembled. Spinning on her heels, she ran and caught up with the redhead, grabbing him by the back of his shirt. Is that all? She looked at her brother with teary eyes. What more do you want? A congratulation? Because I'm not like that. Naruto said with a calm expression, his voice on the other hand was cold. Making a face, Rias stood in front of her twin. I understand you're upset, but I don't want to marry that man and I need to get out of that engagement. Rias, you've made your decision, it's time for me to make mine. Naruto shifted, freeing himself from his sister's grip as he continued walking. Brother. Rias chased after the redhead with her arm outstretched to stop him. Don't call me brother. I endured all your mistreatment, I won't do it again, Naruto replied, dodging his sister by leaning to the side, letting her pass. The redhead who stopped with her tearful gaze. And Naruto, don't go. I love you. Rias cried out, tears streaming down her cheeks. Naruto gave her a mocking look, his empty eyes staring at her as if she were trash. Good for you, because I detest you, you damn piece of shit. You have no idea how much I wish you weren't my blood sister. I'm disgusted by sharing the same blood tie with you. You're just another piece of garbage, he said, resuming his walk with a dark laugh as he passed by his sister. Rias fell to her knees, tears streaming freely down her face. She turned her head towards the redhead and couldn't help but watch her twin retreating, his gaze completely shattered. Breathing heavily, Rias opened her teary eyes. After a few moments, she realized what had happened. A nightmare, she wondered, her voice trembling. Looking down at her bed, she noticed how wet her sheets were, while her sweat-soaked body began to feel sticky. Sinking back onto her bed, Rias sighed with a frown. It was just a silly nightmare, nothing like that would actually happen, right? Naruto's room. HMGH. Naruto-sama, please don't be rude. Be quiet, so the maids can hear us. Plath. Kai. I'm sorry Naruto-sama, I won't shout. TCH, that's what you say, but you still can't keep your mouth shut. Crack. That's because he's very rude to me. Can you be quiet for just 1 minute? I can't, it feels so good. It was almost a purr that came from her lips, so soft and charged with overwhelming lust. Sigh, do you want me to do it again? Glup, And no, of course not Naruto-sama. Then shut up. TRK. Aw, I'm sorry Naruto-sama, it's just so good. TRK, crack. TSH, I told you they'll find us out if you don't lower your voice. I can't do that. Sighing, Naruto watched a smiling Akino with flushed cheeks. The redhead was on top of her, massaging her back. After all, it was his fault she was in this state, with sore muscles and aching bones. To ease the pain, Naruto decided to give her a massage. Forcing her to train with him to avoid boredom was his fault. Don't make obscene noises, the maids can misunderstand everything, and I told you to lower your voice, said Naruto, moving his hands over the shoulders of the dark-haired woman. It's very good. Akino responded with a purr while unconsciously wiggling her rear end. I hope mom doesn't misunderstand this situation if she finds me. I don't want to deal with her anger, Naruto thought, sighing mentally at the thought of his mother being angry at him for finding him in that position with Akino making obscene noises. I should have knocked you out and healed you with magic, Naruto muttered dejectedly. He regretted suggesting giving her a massage as a way of apologizing for bringing her to such a state during their training. A sensual smile from Akino was what he received in response. She had heard his murmur through her enhanced senses. Yes, I definitely should have healed her with magic. Naruto thought as he continued the massage, mentally praying to Lucifer that neither his mother nor the maids would harm her. They entered her room because of the noises Akino was making, which, judging by her playful look, she was doing on purpose. \W \W W W Surzek sighed wearily, his eyes darting dramatically at the enormous mountain of papers on his desk. Inwardly, tears were welling up. He could no longer see his Rias Tan, nor could he show his little brother, Narutan, how wonderful and amazing he was. He wouldn't tell anyone this, but, his favorite little brother. Yes, his favorite brother was Naruto. How could he not be? Just looking at his hair and his adorable face would give you the answer as clear as day. Narutan. Just wait, these papers will never stop me. Flames burned in the irises of her eyes. Determined to finish all the paperwork to return and see her little brother, she would take him through the underworld and buy him everything he wanted. Grafia, from her position behind Surzek, couldn't help but sigh wearily. Her king always had an unhealthy obsession with his younger siblings, but above all, he loved his brother, Naruto, more than anything. She knew this. After all, she saw him do practically anything for him. Even when baby Naruto uttered his first word, which was sex, the Crimson Satan wept aloud, proclaiming his eternal love for his brother. I still got serious chills just remembering how Surzek made a pure gold statue of a baby Naruto, which was in his office. I didn't know if his king was quite right in the head. Imagine admiring and observing your brother's statue almost all day long. That's what crazy people do. Honestly, Surzek was already crazy, but because of his brother, although who could deny it? Naruto-sama is so adorable. Grafia sighed mentally. Yes, she too had a certain affection and obsession with the little one, not only because of how adorable and cute he was, but also because of how kind he treated almost everyone. She had never seen him truly angry, and to be honest, if it ever happened, it wouldn't be good for whoever made him angry. Narutan, wait for your beloved Nisan. I won't rest until I'm finished. Surzek said, his dark glare fixed on the enormous stacks of papers. You malevolent paperwork. I'll defeat you. You won't interfere with my meeting with Narutan. His hands practically seemed to multiply with the speed of his movements as the redhead laughed uproariously. The papers nearly caught fire from the speed at which Surzek was signing. Good heavens, I should take a vacation. Grafia thought with a huge drop of sweat running down her neck. Yes, a vacation would prevent her sanity from disappearing due to Surzek's constant madness. Muahahaha. Suffer, suffer, you despicable wretch. You committed the great sin of interfering in my meeting with my Narutan, as such, you must pay the price. Muahahaha. Yes, a vacation sounds nice. Grafia nodded mentally as she closed her eyes, sinking deep into her thoughts to ponder where she would have her vacation while ignoring her king's laughter. W forward slash backslash W forward slash backslash W forward slash backslash W forward slash backslash W slash. Naruto felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't know why, but he felt he should avoid his brother at all costs. Shrugging, he dismissed it. He couldn't be bad, could he? His brother was just a little clingy, like chewing gum, but nothing more than that. Snapping out of his thoughts, he looked up, taking in the enormous Citri mansion. He was there to visit and spend time with his friend Sona, since his sister, well, she was in a bit of a bad mood that morning, perhaps from a bad dream or something else that had put her in a bad mood, but Naruto didn't want to deal with her today, so he decided to visit his best friend and have some fun with her. Naruto-sama, are you sure you're not in love with Lady Sona? Akino asked with a mischievous look. The redhead blushed slightly. Akino, stop being so nosy, and no, I'm not in love with Sona, she's my best friend, he said, letting out a sigh shortly after speaking. A soft laugh escaped Akino's lips. Era, Naruto-sama, you say it as if you want me to be more than just a friend. Don't talk nonsense. Naruto snorted, crossing his arms. Arriving at the mansion's massive gates, the redhead waited patiently, his magic flowing in small amounts. Whether Sona, her family, or any servant sensed it, they would recognize his magical signature, so Naruto simply had to wait patiently. It wasn't long before the gates opened, and Sona, with one eyebrow raised, peered through the doorway. Naruto, I wasn't expecting you, did something happen? Sona came out with a confused look. Well, the thing is, I wanted to come hang out and have some fun with you and Akino, Naruto replied nervously. The thing is, Naruto-sama doesn't want to be around his angry sister. Akino spoke, a hand covering her mouth, her eyes widening in mock surprise. Oops, sorry Naruto-sama, I didn't mean to reveal your real reason for visiting Lady Sona. Sona sighed. Naruto, really? Naruto glared intently at his bishop. I will punish you severely for this, Akino, and don't even think I'll be so gentle as to give you a massage like I did after training. A deep blush spread across Himejima's cheeks. Of course, Naruto-sama, I will gladly accept my punishment. Akino's gaze reflected lust and longing. He turned his gaze back to Citri as he sighed. The truth is, I don't want to upset Rias, but that's not why I came to you. I also wanted to go out with you and have some fun. Go out? How like on a date? The two of us? Sona looked at Naruto for a moment, her cheeks flushed, before looking down at the ground. Oh, what are you talking about? Akino will come too, you can bring your queen too if you want, Naruto said with a smile, his eyes were closed so he didn't notice the twitch in Sona's eyebrow as she looked at a smiling Akino with her cold violet eyes. Don't worry, Lady Sona, he won't notice me on your outing with friends, Naruto-sama. Akino emphasized the word friends with a cold smile. Sona adjusted her glasses as she looked at Himejima with complete neutrality. Of course you'd make yourself invisible, like you always do. Hardly anyone notices you when they see you with someone like Naruto. Akino's cold smile narrowed slightly before widening again. Of course, they'd never notice me because they'd be so focused on Naruto-sama. No one can help but admire his beauty, even some of the heiresses talk about how handsome Naruto-sama is. I'm so lucky to be able to see him all the time, so much so that I can even be in his room and on his bed. A click came from Sona, her annoyed gaze increasing as Akino smiled with a small mockery. Naruto sighed, slapping his forehead. Can you all stop bringing me into your conversation? It sounds silly, Sona sighed. Well, since you're here, YN-So-tan. A female scream came from inside the enormous mansion. Sona, knowing who it was, gave a fearful look while she stood petrified. Naruto chuckled softly. So-tan. Citri shot her a death glare, and Akino covered her mouth to stifle her laughter. A dark blur crossed through the entrance, opening the enormous doors wider. Sona found her face buried in her sister's ample breasts. So-tan, how could you run away from your Wani-sama like that? Ah, you're so adorable and cute. I'll forgive you for that alone. Sona's cheeks were being pinched by her sister's hands as she smiled and cooed at how cute So-tan looked. "Ne-sama, let me go," Sona replied, her cheeks flushed. "No. I'll never leave you, you're my lovely Sotan." Naruto couldn't hold it in any longer and hunched over, bursting into laughter. Ahahahahahahaha. Their laughter caught the attention of the women. Seraphol looked curiously at the redhead, while Sona felt her blush increase. She wanted the earth to swallow her up from embarrassment. Akino, for her part, smiled wickedly. Era, Naruto-sama, I must remind you that Lord Lucifer also tends to do that to you," said Akino with her bright violet eyes admiring the redhead's pale gaze as her laughter stopped. Seraphol smiled brightly. "Ah. Narutan, you're just as adorable and cute as Sex told me you were." The Mao moved, freeing Sona from her grip in the process, and took the redhead by his cheeks, stretching them with a bright smile. "Help." Naruto gave Akino and Sona a pleading look. Sona adjusted her glasses. Akino smiled as the two girls looked at each other and nodded, agreeing for the first time. They turned away, their backs to the redhead, and began to talk amongst themselves. "It seems Naruto can handle that. If he can do it with Lord Lucifer like you said, it's obvious this is nothing for him," Sona said, adjusting her glasses with a tiny smile. "Of course, Lady Sona, Naruto-sama can handle this. Would you like me to prepare some tea for you?" Akino raised an eyebrow at the citrières. "Sure, it would be nice to try it. Naruto keeps raving about how amazing your tea is." Sona started walking towards the mansion's enormous gates while Akino followed her. "Oh, Naruto-sama, always so flattering. In that case, I must prepare nothing but the best to live up to your expectations." "I would expect no less," Naruto groaned inwardly. "Help." The redhead's shout was ignored by both girls who had entered the Citri mansion. "Oh, Narutan. You're so cute. Now I know why Sex keeps going on about how cute you are." Seraphol continued pinching Naruto's cheeks as the redhead looked defeated. "Ah. I know. Why don't you spend a whole week with me and my Sotan?" "Yes. That's it, I'll steal you away from Sex. Kill me." Naruto thought, imaginary tears running down his cheeks. "Narutan, I'll steal you away and you'll be my new little brother. I'll have both Sotan and you." Naruto closed his eyes in resignation. "This is going to hurt," he thought before grimacing inwardly. "God bless you, Seraphol." The result was instantaneous. Seraphol let him go to rub his head. Naruto also felt the pain, but it was better to run away, cradling his head with a grimace. "Oh. Narutan, come back." Seraphol noticed the redhead's escape after her pain subsided. "Don't look back. Don't look back. Don't look back." /W 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 /W/. Why does that man have to come? Rias asked, looking at her mother with a furrowed brow. Venelana sighed for the umpteenth time. "I've told you 100 times, Rias, Riser is your fiancé and he's invited, as is the Phoenix family, he'll obviously be there." Growling with anger, the Gremory heiress clicked her tongue. "I will not marry that man." "Don't start, Rias, I don't want to argue with you." Sighing to calm her nerves, Rias watched her mother before making a face as she turned to leave. "Rias, if it makes you feel better, the Citri clan will also attend," Venelana said, stopping Rias from moving forward. "He'll probably only come for that idiot Naruto." Rias replied with a disdainful look. "Rias, don't talk to your brother like that." Venelana looked at her daughter with some anger. She couldn't believe how her daughter was insulting her brother. "It's the truth. Every time they come, it's for him. Any family that comes, after seeing him, they only look at him and no one else. They only come for him. Everything for him." Rias shouted through gritted teeth. "Rias, are you jealous of your brother?" Venelana asked with a raised eyebrow, her eyes reflecting concern. It wasn't good for her daughter to feel that way. Making a face, she turned around. "Jealous of that fool? Me? Ha, what a joke, that'll never happen," Rias replied, walking away with a gloomy look while her jaw trembled. Venelana looked at her daughter with a worried expression. Phoenix Mansion. In the enormous mansion of the prestigious and well-known Phoenix family, a riser with an arrogant smile stared at the white envelope. An invitation had been sent to his family, clearly for him. After all, his fiancée was celebrating her 12th birthday party. Riser feels that his beautiful Rias is waiting for him. Behind the blonde man, a blonde woman with a stony expression was watching her brother. Ravel Phoenix stared at her brother, feeling a bad feeling, as if attending this party would bring him nothing good. Riser turned around and looked at his little sister. Ravel, Riser is thinking of getting a gift for his fiancée. You would be a good sister and help Riser in his search. Ravel sighed. Of course, Onie-sama, don't worry, I'll help you. Well, Riser knows that his sister likes that culture, but he finds it a little strange that she uses that nation's honorifics. The only weird one here is you. Who's talking in the third person? That's really strange and unpleasant. Riser sneezed with a grimace, glancing around with clear confusion on his face. He scratched the back of his head, utterly bewildered. Riser thinks someone insulted him. Who was the bastard who did it? I'll show that commoner his place. Revel looked at his brother with a forced smile. Of course, Onie-sama, you can show him his place after the party, he said, a tick mark appearing on his forehead. Riser smiled. Ah, my lovely sister, Riser doesn't know what I'd do without you. Sighing inwardly, Ravel turned his head away in slight annoyance. Surzek's office. The redhead was finishing signing a document when he suddenly frowned. I sense a disturbance of magical power. I mean, I feel like they want to take my little brother away from me. He corrected himself after seeing Graphia's cold stare. Lord Lucifer, I recommend you finish your work before inventing an excuse to avoid signing more documents. Graphia said with a serious look that made the redhead mentally curse. Graphia, come on, you know very well that's not an excuse. Someone wants to take my little brother away from me, I'll find out who's responsible. I haven't told anyone about my Narutan, wait. Sarah Fall. Surzex jumped up with a pale look as sweat covered his cheek. I must remind you that you have work to finish, Lord Lucifer. Graphia's cold, authoritative voice paralyzed Surzex. But Graphia. No buts, he has work to do. Grumbling about how unfair it was, Surzex returned to his seat to continue signing papers. By the way, while he was resting, not really resting, more documents arrived. Graphia dropped a mountain of papers onto Surzex's desk. This has to be an illusion. Surzex sweated nervously at the sheer volume of documents he was about to sign. He'd almost finished his previous pile, but now he wasn't so sure he'd be able to finish and see his beloved little brother. If you don't hurry, the documents will pile up again. I hate my job. With Naruto, the redhead was sitting on a bench in the gardens of his friend's enormous mansion. Akino was beside him with a smile, while Sona sat on his other side. Sona-chan, you were very cruel, said Naruto, pouting as he crossed his arms. Don't be dramatic. Humph. Naruto turned his face away with an annoyed look. Sigh, fine, Naruto, we can go wherever you want. He received no response from the redhead, causing him to mentally groan at the words he was about to say. We can find the ramen you love so much. No sooner had she finished speaking than Naruto had grabbed her arm, smiling. Ramen. Yada, Naruto-sama, he's so cute when he gets excited. Akino watched her king with a marked blush on her cheeks. But don't order too many dishes, or I'll tell Lady Venelana, Sona said with a serious look, stopping Gremory from continuing to celebrate while earning a fearful look. CL clear. Sona smiled smugly, Akino laughed into the palm of her hand. \W /\W /\W /\W. Looking at the envelope in her hands, she couldn't help but smile with excitement. Her violet eyes flickered for a moment toward the destroyed field before returning to the envelope in her hands. For a moment he let out a small laugh. Naruto, I hope you've grown stronger than the last time I saw you. He couldn't wait to see the redhead, their last encounter had been a grueling training session. His impatience was palpable. He was excited to see just how strong his cousin had become. End of chapter. Chapter 2. Several clans attended the twins' birthday celebration, not only to cultivate a good relationship with the Gremory clan, but also to gain their favor in some way. Having the Gremory family on their side also ensured a good relationship with the Bale clan on Venelana's part, so it was no surprise that almost everyone was fawning over the main members of the clan, their compliments and flattery, both false and true, being received by the matriarch of Clan Gremory with a mask of apparent happiness. Away from the adults' chatter, the clan heirs were talking amongst themselves while some followed their parents' example, flattering the clan heir. Since her twin was different from her, he dismissed them as soon as they opened their mouths, and the harsh, cold, cutting words silenced anyone who tried to speak to the younger twin. Rias basked in the attention, basking in the compliments with a smile, imperceptibly tense at her twin's antics, but she wouldn't deny that she enjoyed receiving praise from the other heirs. Sona, from her place beside Naruto, sighed softly. Her friend wasn't exactly known for his sociability and didn't seem to care much about this little party. She knew better than anyone, Naruto didn't appreciate his and his twins' birthdays being used as a cover for adults to try to curry favor with his family or to gain political power through him with an arranged marriage. Naruto glanced briefly at his sister before turning and starting to walk in the direction where he was sure the adults were gathered. He needed to talk to his parents about something important, something they certainly wouldn't like if they knew what it was. Crossing through the entrance, he moved around the place looking at the other demons drinking wine from their glasses and talking with smiles so fake that even he couldn't see through them. He could detect them from miles away, or perhaps he was too good that not even a demon with ulterior motives would escape his sight. Lord Naruto, it's a pleasure to see you here. My congratulations on this day. Turning their red eyes, they caught sight of a blonde with pigtails shaped like drills. Ravel Phoenix, if she remembered correctly, her soon-to-be sister-in-law if the union of the two noble houses came to pass. I appreciate your consideration, Lady Ravel. Your beautiful and lovely appearance only increases each time I see you again, said Naruto with a well-practiced smile that went unnoticed. Ravel blushed, smiled briefly before regaining his composure by coughing falsely into his fist. I appreciate the compliment. I have something for you, as a token of my goodwill. Raising her hand, a magic circle bearing the phoenix crest appeared above it as a dark red box fell into her palm. Handing it to the redhead, Ravel looked embarrassed before squealing slightly as her fingers made minimal contact with Naruto's while she took the box. Again, I appreciate your consideration. Naruto replied, smiling gently, his eyes gazing into Ravel's deep blue orbs, which made her blush before nodding. Well, I apologize that our little meeting ended so abruptly, but I have something to do. It was a pleasure talking with someone as beautiful and clever as you. Naruto smiled one last time before turning on his heels, walking away while his face turned cold once he was far away from the blonde. I need to go to that place. Only there will I be able to become truly powerful. In the underworld there was a place, a tower to be specific. They called it the Celestial Tower, not because it contained a sacred element or anything like that, no, it was because only beings with overwhelming power, capable of rivaling celestial beings, inhabited that dangerous place. There was a legend that said Lucifer ordered the construction of that place. With over 366 floors, the Celestial Tower served as a prison for various wandering demons and all kinds of demonic entities, who were imprisoned and chained within its walls. For his own amusement, Lucifer made each floor a separate dimension, each a distinct world as large as planet Earth. Even if they were as enormous as the sun, there was a possibility that they could be several times larger than that. One day, the demon lord climbed each floor wearing only human clothing, not wanting to spoil his fun. The difficulties weren't what he expected, it was so easy to climb that he grew bored by the third day. Opting for something more entertaining, he cursed the tower, so that no being inside could ever be free until they had climbed the entire tower, completely conquered a floor, or until no living thing remained in the place. The prisoners began killing each other, cannibalizing each other, spilling rivers of blood just to escape or to annihilate one another. It was easier to kill each other than to climb the tower. On each floor, Lucifer himself had placed a guardian to prevent the prisoners' escape. Each guardian possessed immeasurable power, not only because they had been chosen by Lucifer, but also because each guardian consumed anyone who set foot on their floor, only to be eaten and devoured by the guardian of that floor. Every few centuries, the guardians changed floors, so that only the strongest of all would dominate the tower and remain at the top, with the one on the top floor facing the ultimate and final test. Not even his brother Cerzex attempted to climb that tower, due to his phobia of what Lucifer had imprisoned within its walls. Countless demons, from the high class to the ultimate, were devoured in that tower. Every demon who entered never returned. At first, they did so because they couldn't believe that a simple tower could house beings of that caliber, and they paid the price for their actions. Others did so because it was rumored that all of Lucifer's wealth, all his weaponry, and all manner of priceless objects were kept there, guarded by the fearsome guardians. Looking at the box in his hand, he sent it to a pocket dimension through a magic circle. He stopped when a hand landed on his left shoulder. Looking up, he saw familiar blue eyes and a smile full of arrogance. I sighed in annoyance. Riser, do you need something? Riser's smile widened. Can't Riser see his brother-in-law? Ravel advanced, approaching both heirs with a conflicted look. From the glare they were exchanging, it was obvious they didn't want to see each other at all. He didn't want a confrontation to happen. Clearing his throat, he intervened to prevent a fight. /W /W W W /W Venelana looked around with a small smile. Oh, look how beautiful you are with the passing of the years. Turning around, his eyes caught the blonde-haired female figure of a certain lady. The same could be said of you. Look how beautiful you are. There's no doubt that it will only increase with time, Lady Layla, Venelana said with a gentle smile. Oh ho ho, there's no need to be so formal, we'll be fam, very soon. Boom. Layla was interrupted. An explosion rocked the entire place, knocking over bottles that shattered on contact with the ground. The brick wall was destroyed, leaving a huge hole. Crash. A blurry figure had crashed to the ground in a crater almost 20 meters wide. Say it again, you bastard. Say that right in my face and I'll break your whole body. Stepping through the hole, Naruto, with a cold stare, passed by as his body expelled immense amounts of magic, exerting a pressure that could be felt in the tense atmosphere. Rising, Riser brushed the dust from his clothes with a furious glare. Flames erupted from his body as he glared at the Gremory before him. Hatred blazed in his blue eyes, even though his body had regenerated from the explosion long ago. He wouldn't admit it, but for someone Naruto's age, his power was impressive, enough to seriously injure him with a simple spell. Veins of anger popped out on his face as he grabbed his tie and ripped it off before throwing it to the ground with a tense, angry smile directed at the redhead. I'll make you cry like a baby. Just because you're going to be my brother-in-law doesn't mean I won't hit you, Riser said, overflowing with arrogance, his fire building in his hand, which pointed to the redhead in front of him. You wish, Naruto replied, pointing his finger at Riser. Blackish red particles gathered to form an orb of destruction the size of a marble. Pathetic. Riser launched his attack, which traveled at considerable speed, leaving rings of fire in its wake. That's what I should be saying, Naruto replied as he pushed the orb with his finger. The distance was covered in less than a microsecond. The flames extinguished upon contact with the tiny orb, which didn't stop and crashed into the chest of a startled Riser. The attack sent him crashing through the wall of the hall, sending him flying out of the room before a red glow appeared. Boom! A magical explosion of destructive power had occurred. The body of the Phoenix heir was completely covered by the dome of black-red magic. Walking in the direction of the hole, Naruto stopped when he saw Riser's entire entourage. At the front of them all was Yubaluna with a serious expression. Lord Naruto can't. Shut up and kneel, you filthy slave. A simple command silenced her. The suffocating pressure of his magic forced her to fall face down on the ground in a submissive manner, followed by the others as Naruto advanced with a cold gaze. They tried to resist or lift their faces, but only ended up falling harder to the ground. For someone their age, releasing such immense pressure was more than a surprise, that was evident on the faces of those present. Emerging from the tremor and commotion, Risa and the other heirs went outside, only to be shocked by the sight before them. The Riser nobility were kneeling submissively on the ground. They understood as they approached. The suffocating pressure emanating from Naruto made them want to swallow them whole and push them to the ground. Was he always this strong? Rias bit her lower lip, jealousy burning in her eyes with an angry glare. Tap, tap, tap. Naruto's soft, quiet footsteps echoed against the ground, each step sending shivers down the spines of the women on the floor. Passing by them without even a glance, he moved toward the hole before stepping through it and continuing on his way. The riser members were able to stand once the redhead was gone, breathing deeply as their legs trembled and sweat beaded on their foreheads and faces. What's going on here? A noble demon wondered with clear confusion. A fight between two high-class demons should only happen in the raiding game. That's exactly what I want to know, said Venelana, looking where her son had been, who at no point looked at her or anyone else. Rias frowned, averting her gaze in Ravel's direction before pointing at her. You're the only one who could have known what happened. You're a piece of shit. Boom. An explosion of flames stopped Ravel from speaking. The flames rose into an orange-gold pillar while a pillar of black-red magic seemed to suck all the flames in until it completely covered them, leaving only its power above the flames. Surzek stared intently at his queen. She simply closed her eyes before sighing and nodding. He moved forward in the direction where a fight appeared to be breaking out. Venelana turned her gaze towards her other son, looking at him seriously. He just sighed with a tired look. Approaching his mother, he grimaced at her serious expression as the pod began to cover his body like a second layer of skin, the ground beginning to scorch as the rocks turned into nothing. I don't know what's happening either, mother. I sent Grafia to prevent anything worse from happening, said Surzex, standing before his mother, whose serious expression intensified, making him swallow, adjusting his collar with his hand in a sign of discomfort. I hope so, Surzex, because I don't want my baby to get hurt. If that happens, I'll punish you. He brought it on himself, Rias muttered from a distance with a sneer. \W \\W \W 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 You hit like a girl, Riser said with a smile, and you? You haven't even landed a single blow on me. I'm sure your strength is as pathetic as you are. Naruto jumped, avoiding a small sea of flames that covered the ground, burning him as the heat became noticeable. You only know how to dodge. On the other hand, I can take any hit and I'll heal because I am immortal, yeah, blah blah, a lot of talk from a useless being who's only good for yakitori. Naruto raised his hand, causing a magic circle to appear as he expelled magic in large quantities. If you boast so much about your regeneration, then endure this. The magic circle glowed, and from its center shot a powerful and gigantic beam of magic with the power of destruction, which covered several tens of meters around Riser. This won't make me dash. Boom. Yes, I know that, but it doesn't stop you from feeling the pain, Naruto said with an amused smile, floating in the air with the help of his wings. Emerging from the enormous amount of dust, Riser coughed as his body began to regenerate the parts he had lost due to that attack. Damn it. That didn't do anything to me, Riser said with an arrogant smile. You must have used a lot of your magic in that attack. Actually, no, I still have enough magic to launch that same attack about 200 times before I start sweating, Naruto replied as he returned to. Invoking the magic circle, magical energy was expelled from his body, covering him with a crimson-red aura. Why, you must be joking. Yes, that must be a joke. Riser smiled nervously. Hey, I can do something more fun. The magic circle disappeared. Good joke, I knew it, you couldn't dash. Naruto raised both hands, and a huge magic circle appeared in the sky. It was so large that it could cover several hundred meters, almost a kilometer in distance. I told you, I have enough magic, Naruto said with a smile. Why, you're crazy, an attack like that will destroy the Gremory estate. I don't think so. A cold, feminine voice stopped any movement. Naruto looked away, meeting a serious Grafia who stared at him with arched eyebrows, her magical aura radiating coldness. Riser could only swallow hard at the arrival of the familiar silver-haired woman. Grafia, my brother must have sent you. Come back, I'm sorting some things out with Riser, Naruto said, turning his gaze back to the blonde boy. I'm afraid I can't do something like that, Lord Lucifer wants to avoid any unnecessary harm, Grafia replied. Sighing, the magic circle disappeared as she slowly descended to the ground before retracting her wings. Riser approached, sweat trickling down his forehead. For a moment, he took the opportunity to admire the beautiful woman's figure. He couldn't help but look at her lustfully because of how beautiful and well-formed she was. I'll destroy your eyes if you don't stop staring at Grafia like that. Naruto expelled magic, creating pressure with Riser glaring at him with a furious expression. Riser doesn't have dash. If you don't shut up, I'll attack with everything I've got, even when Grafia tries to stop me, Naruto replied, silencing the blonde boy who could only growl in anger. Grafia smiled slightly. For a moment she could see what appeared to be possessiveness in the redhead's eyes, and it amused her a little if she was honest. They walked in silence, Riser and Naruto exchanging glares. Grafia only had an expressionless face due to the actions of both of them. Arriving in front of the other demons, Grafia led them towards Surzex, who was with his mother and father. He bowed to the redhead. Lord Lucifer, I prevented greater harm from occurring. Thank you very much, Grafia, Surzex said, looking at his brother before turning to look at his parents and then back at him. Now, Naruto, could you tell me what happened to start this argument? I'll just say that the bleached blonde guy opened his mouth too wide, Naruto replied mockingly. You were spared humiliation only because they interfered in the fight. Riser didn't show you your place on the ground. Riser smiled arrogantly. Do you want to finish it? I know a place with plenty of space to destroy every part of the body. Naruto had a demonic look, his red orbs glowed, his calm smile only added to his appearance. Guys, let's calm down, there's no need to start a fight. Now, if you could tell me why all this started, I would greatly appreciate it. Surzex smiled calmly. Venolana approached and placed her hands on Naruto's shoulders. Naruto, I hope this wasn't started because of your animosity toward your sister's marriage to Riser. Smiling mockingly, he looked his mother straight in the eyes before glancing at the blonde phoenix. It has nothing to do with that, no, what happened was that Mr. Yakitori opened his mouth and spouted pure garbage. I won't tolerate his despicable words. Mother, let me have a showdown with the heir of the Phoenix family, this matter must end with a fight. Naruto took a few steps forward, standing in front of Riser as Surzex stepped between them to prevent a fight from starting right there. You wouldn't hold a candle in front of Riser, spare yourself the humiliation, and if you apologize on your knees, I might forgive you. Riser smiled haughtily, lifting his face and looking down at the redhead. If they don't say how all this started, we can't reach a so dash. Naruto cut Surzex off. Ni-san, just send us to that desolate place, Yakitori, and I will solve this problem. Apparently they won't say how this conflict started. Surzex sighed, rubbing his temples with one hand. I told you, Ni-san, send us to that place, yes, as a favor and then I'll return it to you. Naruto looked at his brother with a smile that made him squeal like a schoolgirl. Of course, Narutan, anything for you. Before he could even think about his actions, Surzex created a magic circle through which he teleported both Naruto and Riser. He received expressionless looks from those present, others only sighed. His mother, with a furious look, glared at her son with eyes penetrating through his soul. Mother, W8, I just solved this problem, Surzex said, his hands covering his face to avoid any attack. Solve the problem, how? By letting two noble demons fight, is that solving the problem? Venolana approached her son with furious steps as the floor seemed to be made of paper because of how it broke. Hi, no, that's not it. I sent them so their argument would end, besides, Ravel could explain what happened while they sort out their problem. Surzex shouted, his eyes fearful of his mother's fury. Venolana sighed, stopping and turning to face Ravel. My dear, could you tell us about how a dispute between Naruto and Riser began? Ravel nodded awkwardly. She knew it was more of an order and she couldn't refuse, not when her parents were also watching and wanted to know why two demons from noble houses were now fighting. It started when my brother Riser initiated a conversation with Naruto. Underworld. Over 200 kilometers away from the Gremory estate. Is that all your strength? Naruto stopped a fire-infused punch from Riser, his hand smoking as the blonde's hand trembled from trying to even move the redhead's arm. Don't be arrogant, I'm just getting started. Riser kicked Naruto straight in the ribs, and the force of the blow sent him crawling several meters along the ground while groaning in pain. Weak, Naruto said with a smile before moving to his left side, dodging a burst of fire that scorched the ground, heating up the air. You won't say that when you're crying after a beating. Riser flew through the air with his fiery wings, approaching Naruto at high speed. The blonde boy retracted his hand into a fist before pushing him forward. Naruto stopped the flaming blow with his palm, his smile one of amusement. Like I said, weak, you, BAS dash. Boom! Riser's face jerked to the side from the force of Naruto's punch. Naruto slammed his knee into Riser's sternum before spinning around, unleashing a roundhouse kick to the blonde's face, sending him flying with the force of the blow. There's no point in continuing. I'll end this by showing you the clear difference in power. Naruto gathered magic in his hand. An orb of destruction the size of a ball had formed. Pointing towards a riser that was rising from the ground, the sphere took off, leaving a clear stain in the air, like a trail in the air, and in less than 1/100th of a second, it hit the blonde man's face, who was half surprised. Detonating in an explosion several tens of meters across, a spherical dome of magic expanded until, several seconds later, it began to compressing until it finally disappears into a small blackish red dot. Black smoke completely enveloped Riser. No matter how immortal you are, you will still feel the pain of the attacks, Naruto murmured, watching Riser's body begin to regenerate through the fire. Damn you! You won't get another stroke of luck. I'll end this once and for all. Riser surrounded himself with flames that completely covered his body, which accumulated above him in a huge sphere of flames. Naruto smiled happily. It's time to unleash all my magic. Raising his hands, he created a magic circle similar to the one he had formed near the Gremory estate, but this one was almost 3 times its size. That's nothing. Riser launched his attack, not at all convinced that Naruto could launch an attack of such magnitude. Smiling maliciously this time, Naruto unleashed a massive amount of magic. That's exactly what your girls in the dorm must have told you. Kaboom! An explosion of titanic proportions erupted, caused by the immense beam of destructive magic that had shot through the enormous magic circle. The attack completely consumed Riser's sphere of fire, reducing it to nothing before impact, shaking the entire area. I almost didn't make it, Naruto whispered with a tiny smile. His body had been protected from the explosion by a magic shield that used up huge amounts of his vast magic reserves, and yet he still had more magic to continue fighting. Regenerating, Riser coughed up blood before frowning. Bastard! What did you do to me? Nothing bad, it's just that your body is regenerating and destroying itself every second. Naruto replied, still smiling. That is dash. Very simple indeed, my attack wasn't just an explosion, it also released microparticles of destruction that adhered to your body, attacking every part of it. Cell in your body. You should feel its effect right now. Riser gritted his teeth, staring at his hands, and was shocked to see his arms begin to crumble into dust. Damn it! Riser forced his body to work, regenerating his lost limbs before beginning to turn to dust the next second. What the hell? In case you haven't noticed, there were large amounts of destructive power in my last attack, too many microparticles that can be used in the environment, which more and more of them immediately adhere to your body, destroying it and restarting the regeneration and destruction process in your body, Naruto said with a huge smile at the sight of Riser's pale face. Make it stop. Riser bit the inside of his lip in pain, each time his limb turned to dust, the pain increased throughout his body. I don't think so. I'll help you increase the destruction process if you want, Naruto said, raising his hand and pointing at Riser before closing it into a fist. It immediately seemed that Riser's body was beginning to turn to ashes, even his flames that tried to bring back the lost limbs turned to ashes as soon as they appeared. Aya Aghai. Stop. Halt, ha ha ha. I'll stop if you lick my shoes and kneel down begging for mercy. Naruto laughed with amusement at Riser's scream of pain. Grunting in pain and biting his lip to avoid screaming, Riser glared at Naruto. That will never happen. Then my attack will never stop. Ag. That's a lie, every attack has a limit. Your magic reserves will run out at any moment. There's one thing that sets me apart from my sister, Naruto began, pacing in circles around Riser. She was considered a prodigy for awakening the power of destruction at such a young age, whereas I was different, even though I awakened it. Later on, there was something that made me very different from her. Naruto paused, looking Riser in the eyes. And that was my growth. Grunting, Riser mocked Naruto despite the pain. Growth? Stop talking nonsense. Naruto shook his head, wagging his index finger. No, no, no. My growth was something I discovered on my own. Every time I depleted all my magic reserves, it took about 2 to 3 days for them to replenish. The shocking thing is that they doubled each time it happened. Do you know when that started? What, since you cried? Riser asked mockingly before stifling a cry of pain. No, it was when I was 9 years old. Damn. What does that have to do with anything? Let me ask you more simply, how big do you think my magic reserves are, if I haven't stopped emptying them since then? Riser's gaze flickered with fear for a moment before he laughed at how absurd it sounded. That's nonsense. Pain once more attacked his body, of which only his torso remained despite his attempts to regenerate. If it's nonsense, how do you explain this? A magic circle that seemed to measure kilometers and kilometers in diameter formed as reddish orbs of magic were expelled from Naruto's body. Don't mess with me, Riser muttered in terror. If an attack of such magnitude was even remotely similar to the one Naruto had previously launched, then Riser was almost certain that his existence would perish in that very instant. Not surprisingly, despite his efforts, his body was still trying to regenerate from all the damage caused by the microparticles of destruction. Yes, it's incredible how much magic my body can hold, Naruto said, looking at Riser with a smile. If what you're saying is true, why are you telling me? He was confused about it, because Naruto was going to tell him something about his power. With an amused look, his eyes flashed. To show you the difference in strength. Swallowing hard, Riser tried to stop the redhead. Your attack could kill me, and with that, you would start a war between two noble families. Are you aware of that? That much is clear. I'm not going to kill you, but that doesn't mean I won't make you suffer a little. I'll make you see your beloved regeneration as a curse, Naruto said, canceling the magic circle. There was no need for such an attack, he would only toy with Riser before returning to his family. Snapping his fingers, Naruto cancelled his spell, and Riser's body stopped turning to dust as he sighed with some relief at having his body fully regenerated again. You've been strengthening your body with the help of magic, you also use it as a second skin and a shield, Riser said, having noticed that. Now he could get a little revenge on Naruto since his body no longer had to struggle to regenerate. You barely noticed. While what Sarorg told me is true, I don't want to be a complete mass of muscle, Naruto said, disappearing from his spot before kicking Riser in the spine, sending the blonde flying through the air before he recovered with the help of his wings. Sarorg Bale, that abomination, how sad that you're related to someone like that. Riser smiled with careless mockery. My cousin can kick your ass in 1,000 different ways, you're just jealous of him. That's a lie. Riser roared furiously, his magical aura exploding accordingly. You see. You can't even come close to him, believe me, I've already faced him and he's more powerful than you could ever dream of, said Naruto as he moved his arms to the sides, causing hundreds of thousands of magic circles to appear in the air, completely surrounding Riser. Just shut up. Riser erupted in fury, sending out massive amounts of fire spells. Sorry, I hurt your fragile pride. Naruto mocked. The magic circles unleashed hundreds of thousands of destructive beams, each one obliterating Riser's attacks, who continued to unleash more and more fire spells. Explosions erupted around him with each impact between attacks, the fire was consumed and reduced to nothing before the black-red beams crashed into the ground, exploding and engulfing the surrounding area in smoke. Leaping, Naruto took out his wings and soared into the air, watching a furious Riser unleash attacks left and right against him, trying to hit him with a spell that was simply countered by his attacks of destruction. It's more fun to fight with cousin Sarorg, he knows about excitement, especially when we break every bone in our bodies, thought Naruto, remembering how he used to train with Sarorg. Boom, boom, boom. The explosions continued for several minutes. Naruto could only watch as black smoke completely covered the ground within a 100-meter radius. He raised an eyebrow when Riser's attack stopped, sighing as he felt the Phoenix Air's magic diminish so much that he should barely be conscious. Stepping down to the ground, he watched intently as the smoke slowly dissipated, revealing a Riser who was panting with his legs shaking. Are you finished? Naruto asked curiously, which only served to anger the blonde boy. Damned, Pam, shut your mouth already, you're making too much noise, Naruto muttered, having silenced Riser with a kick to the face in a swift movement, leaving him on the ground with a bruise that was healing slowly compared to previous times. Damn it. This isn't over, Riser said, getting up with a grunt. His eyes caught a smiling Naruto who just pointed in his direction with a finger. If you didn't have enough, tell me, because I still have plenty of magic to spare, Naruto replied, smiling wickedly. He hadn't even used half of his vast magic reserves. He was certain he could cast a large-scale spell powerful enough to destroy the moon, and he'd still have magic to spare. Shit, page dash. Better shut up, Naruto said, kicking Riser in the chin, causing him to bite his tongue as blood trickled down his chin. Now, repeat what you said at the party, huh, you bastard, repeat it. Naruto grabbed Riser by the face, lifting him easily while his other hand closed into a fist which was covered by the pod. Riser only gave Naruto the middle finger before grunting in pain from being hit in the chest. Behind him, a black-red lightning bolt shot out towards the skies until it disappeared. Now that I think about it, I was going to meet up with my cousin for another little training session before heading to the Celestial Tower. Right, I also wanted to tell my mother about my little trip. Naruto thought, striking Riser again, this time in the face, obliterating half of him and revealing the inside of his body, which was beginning to regenerate, albeit more and more slowly. I'll do it as soon as I'm done having fun with my demonic punching bag. End of chapter. Chapter 3. Appearing through a magic circle bearing the Gremory crest, Naruto was greeted by a range of glances from those present, some curious, others annoyed. Turning his attention to where his family was, he approached, and when he was just a few feet away, his mother grabbed his cheeks with an angry look. Young man, you're in a lot of trouble. Venelana pulled a little more of her son's cheeks, leaving them with a noticeable red mark before hugging him tightly. The Phoenix family approached the mother and son duo. Layla was a little tense, trying to find her son. She had only seen the Gremory appear, there was no sign of Riser, and that was worrying her. Riser. Layla didn't fully formulate her question. He shouldn't be long, Naruto replied, downplaying the blonde Phoenix. Ria scoffed, averting her gaze. Akino smiled with one hand covering her lips, her cheeks were red as her violet eyes admired her king. From the ground a magic circle opened with the Phoenix crest in it, emerging from it, Riser with a pale look, his face covered in cold sweat and with trembling steps headed towards his mother. Riser, is everything alright? Lord Phoenix looked at his son with some concern, he seemed terrified of his surroundings, biting his fingers, hurting himself, and with blood dripping from them. Brother? Ravel called out, sounding somewhat frightened by his brother's actions. There's nothing wrong, we just settled our differences, right, brother-in-law? Naruto smiled, his eyes gleaming ominously for a few moments. Riser jumped at the call before offering a strained smile. Oh, of course, our misunderstanding is in the past, he said, his voice slightly strained. His parents were not convinced, and their concern increased even more. I just want to leave. Riser quickly said goodbye to everyone and disappeared through a magic teleportation circle in the direction of his home, his entourage soon following him with worried looks. With a dark smile, Naruto hid his face in his mother's stomach, whom he was hugging. This is the last thing I'll do for you, dear sister, now it's time for me to focus on my own interests. \W \W \W. After that small incident, things did not escalate further, although the relationship between the Phoenix and Gremory families became more tense, no other similar moment or confrontation occurred. Naruto was looking at the things in his magic backpack, this dimensional object that could hold millions of tons in it, something he would use to its full capacity for what he had planned to do. Days ago, he'd had an argument with his parents, agreeing to let him go on his trip only if Grafia accompanied him. Having no other choice, he accepted. Now he was packing what he needed. It wasn't that he was angry with his family, he knew they were worried about his well-being, but he just wished they would stop treating him like a helpless child. The sound of the door being opened distracted him. Looking back, he saw his bishop enter his room with a serious expression. Naruto-sama, do you really plan to do this? She gave him a worried look, she didn't want to see him hurt or injured. He had done so much for Himejima, helping her with her health, taking care of her, and most importantly, helping her overcome the trauma and hatred she felt for being part of the fallen. She truly cared much more than a servant for his master. The truth is that she was in love with him, and her deep love only increased with the passage of time. With a small smile, Naruto approached his bishop, placing a hand on his shoulder. Don't worry, I thought I'd already told you this. I want to leave my mark on everything, and to do that I need to become strong, and this is the fastest and most effective way to do it. Akino bit her lip. But still, hey, I told you, I'll come back no matter what, Naruto said with a loving look directed at his precious friend. No. She frowned. What? Naruto looked at her in surprise at the sudden shout. I said no. I won't leave you. If you leave, I will too. A place without my king is nothing. What kind of bishop would I be if I didn't follow my king? Naruto sighed. Akino, you know why I don't want you to follow me. It'll be too dangerous. Akino glared at him. That's why I'll go with you, no matter where. You won't go without me, even to the very depths of hell, I'll go with you. Looking at her determined face, he couldn't help but curse inwardly. He didn't want to expose his friend to danger, not her. He wouldn't change his mind, he knew her too well and knew she was so stubborn that even if he refused to let her accompany him, she would follow him on her own. Do you know we could die? Naruto rubbed his face with his hand, looking through the opening of his fingers at his bishop. Death doesn't scare me. I will follow you and I won't change my mind, Akino declared, leaving no trace of denial from the redhead. I hate that you're so stubborn. Naruto began to mutter with some annoyance. Smiling playfully, she approached the redhead and kissed his cheek before hugging him and whispering in his ear, Don't fool yourself, I know you like that part of me. TSH, women, Naruto muttered before walking away with a slightly annoyed look because things hadn't gone the way he wanted. Pack everything you need and if you do dash. It's not necessary, I already have everything ready, Akino replied, holding her own suitcase, which she had summoned through a magic circle. Graphia knocked on the open door with her knuckles before calling out to the redhead. Lord Naruto, if you're ready, your parents and Lord Lucifer are waiting to see you off. That's right Graphia, tell them I'm coming down now, Naruto replied, receiving a nod from the silver-haired girl who left shortly after. Ready? He stared at the dark-haired girl who just smiled affectionately. Yes. Akino nodded, her expression a mixture of excitement and happiness. She wouldn't leave her king's side, and that was the most important thing to her, her king and him alone. Several minutes later. Blah. Surzex, stop crying. Your brother just wants to take a little trip to the underworld, it's nothing serious, Venelana said, watching her eldest son cry uncontrollably. Nothing serious? Naruto-sama practically wants to commit suicide, but it doesn't matter, I'll be there with him, Akino thought, turning to look at her king with a loving smile. She wouldn't let anything bad happen to him, even if she had to give her own life for him, she would do it immediately. Humph, he'll only be away for a few years exploring, at least I'll have some peace and quiet for myself, Rias muttered, averting her gaze from her brother. Blah. You don't understand, mother. It will feel like an eternity without my Narutan. Bwaya. That makes me so sad. Surzex shed more tears, which he wiped away with his forearm before crying again and wiping them away once more. Zeoticus smiled tensely at his son's behavior, coughing as he looked at Naruto with a smile to forget Surzek's awkward behavior. Try to stay safe and listen to Graphia in everything, he said with a serious look while rubbing his son's hair. Of course, said Naruto. No way. While thinking about something else. Blah. Graphia, keep my Narutan safe. Promise me, promise me. You'll keep my Narutan safe. Promise me. Surzex shook Graphia, like a possessed madman, holding her by her uniform. Graphia sweated at her king's behavior, she couldn't help it and hit his head with a fist. It hurts. Narutan, pet me. Come on, do it. If you don't, I might die. No, back off, that's creepy, Naruto said with a grimace, his brother was getting on his nerves. Bwaya. Naruto-in. Don't be like that. Striking him again, but harder this time, Graphia looked seriously at the older redhead. Lord Lucifer, I must remind you that you have to behave, and in my absence someone will be taking my place for these years. I also want to inform you that she will be just as, if not more, disciplined than I am. Stopping, his face contorted with fear, Surzex looked at Graphia. Why you don't mean? With a chilling smile, Graphia seemed to look at the current Lucifer with amusement. Yes, it's her. Screaming like a little girl, the redhead jumped into Venelana's arms. Mommy. She's here. Protect me, you have to or I'll die. Putting his son down, he punched him in the head before delivering another blow while a double bump formed on his head, his fist smoking from the punch. Behave yourself, Surzex. Approaching Naruto, she stroked his hair before hugging him tightly, nearly squeezing the life out of him. My baby. How could you leave your mother? Mommy will miss you so much. Sitting down on the floor, Surzex pouted. Even I didn't get hugged like that when I was little. Returning the hug, Naruto inhaled his mother's scent so he would never forget it. Don't worry, mother, I'll be back, and much better than before. Venolana smiled without letting go of the hug. She would miss her baby terribly. She didn't know why she wanted to go on a trip to the underworld, but if she went with Grafia she wouldn't worry so much. Even so, she still felt a certain reluctance to let him go. Please stay out of danger. Venolana squeezed her son into a hug. Don't worry, Grafia will be with me. That didn't stop her from thinking something else. Sorry, I can't tell you what she planned to do, otherwise you'd lock me in my room. I'll apologize to you as much as you want when I get back. With a final group hug between his parents, Naruto approached his brother. We'll see each other later, Ni-sama, Naruto said with a smile. Hiya. Narutan, you're so cute. Surzex practically suffocated his brother to death with his hug. Naruto's face turned blue. Lord Lucifer, I fear that if you continue, Lord Naruto will die of asphyxiation, Grafia said in a cold tone that chilled the redhead's blood. Releasing her brother, but not before giving him another hug, she walked away, tears streaming down her face. Looking at her sister, I sighed mentally as she moved a little closer. Don't even think I'm going to miss you, Ria said, frowning. He's tiring, Naruto thought, noticing his brother's attitude. Well. I'll see you in a few years. I guess. The redhead glanced uncomfortably at his sister before sighing and turning away. Idiot. Rias turned her face away with a small pout. Naruto, aren't you going to say a proper goodbye to your sister? Venolana gave her son a serious look. Well, Naruto murmured, approaching the redhead and then giving her an awkward hug for both of them, which was seen as adorable by the parents because of how their arms were trembling while they didn't look each other in the eyes or at each other's faces. Pulling away, Naruto walked unsteadily with an embarrassed look. Brother. I love you. I hate you, Rias bit her lower lip, blushing deeply, and glanced at her twin. Akino bowed deeply before her king's family. I bid you farewell, Lady Rias, Lady Gremory, Lord Lucifer. Venolana gave her little one a curious look. Naruto, wasn't Akino supposed to stay away? Well. I changed my mind. Naruto smiled nervously, almost certain that if he denied it, Akino would accuse him of revealing where he was really headed. Looking at her for a moment, he saw her smile with amusement, confirming it. See you in a few years. Saying goodbye, Naruto walked away excitedly as a crimson magic circle formed beneath his feet. Akino followed shortly after, bowing one last time to her family. Don't worry, I'll protect Lord Naruto. Grafia bowed before moving in the direction of the duo. Naruto waved his hand with a smile. Goodbye, Mom. The circle emitted an intense glow that momentarily blinded everyone before the teleportation began. Venolana bit her lip. No, wait. Don't go. Too late, the trio had already been teleported. No. My baby. Venolana looked in terror where her beloved son had been. Zeoticus hugged his wife. Don't worry, Grafia is with him, nothing bad will happen to him. Surzex shed tears in torrents. My Narutan is gone. Zeoticus sighed wearily at his wife and son's actions. They had an unhealthy obsession with their son. Well, at least Rias was the most normal of them all. He didn't have to worry about her, she'd shown she didn't have a morbid love for her brother, had she? The redhead was smiling as she hugged herself, her legs rubbing together. Naruto, when you return, your Wanisama will become your wife. Nothing will ever be able to separate us, not even this foolish contract, and I will destroy anyone who tries to separate me from you, my beloved little brother. Rias smiled sickly, her eyes taking on a crimson glow. \W 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 W forward slash backslash W forward slash backslash W slash BRRR. What the heck was that? Naruto asked no one in particular, his gaze wandering around his surroundings. Naruto-sama, are you alright? Akino looked at her king with concern. Yes, I just felt a chill run down my spine, maybe the weather here is stronger than in other places, Naruto replied, rubbing his hands together. If you'll excuse me, Lord Naruto, where are we headed? Graphia walked a little behind Naruto to keep watch and not lose sight of the redhead. She couldn't allow him to get even a scratch. The truth is I was thinking of going to Silent Hill, Naruto said, looking at the map in his hands. Graphia paused for a second, then continued walking. Are you sure? Of course, there's something I want to verify before continuing to explore. Graphia sighed. Half an hour later, the hill wasn't too far from their location, all thanks to Naruto teleporting nearby. Akino looked around at the dark forest. Naruto-sama, are we close? Walking calmly, Naruto glanced over his shoulder at his bishop for a moment. We're almost there. The silver-haired woman rubbed her temples. She didn't know what Naruto was trying to find out. Stopping, Naruto whistled a little. So it must be around here, he murmured, smiling at what was in front of him. Akino approached the redhead. What are you referring to? He didn't finish speaking because he was staring intently at the enormous, dark cliff that divided the path. The dense darkness of the cliff was so thick that little could be seen through it. Graphia gazed seriously at the enormous cliff. I don't think. Naruto smiled as he let himself fall headfirst into the dark cliff, followed by Akino. These children, Graphia muttered before leaping up to chase after them. Naruto-sama. Are you sure we won't die? Akino looked intently at her king, although she could barely see him because of how dense the darkness was on this cliff. Naruto just smiled. When I give you the order, you'll spread your wings. Akino nodded, waiting for the signal. Gremory wore a smile of excitement. His unproven research was now being tested and verified. Several seconds later, Naruto knew it was time. Do it now. He immediately unfurled his demonic wings as Akino followed suit. Space seemed to distort, a white light illuminated the dark cliff, and Naruto and Akino passed through it. Opening her eyes, Akino observed with some surprise how she was falling from a great height in what appeared to be an abandoned and ruined city. Here, looking at his king, he saw Naruto propel himself into the air, heading towards an upside-down tower. But what? Through the air, Naruto was able to control his flight, moving to the top of the tower, where there was a dark violet door. Around the tower below was a sea of purple flames and toxic gases. Slowly, he descended to the door, concealing his wings as he stared intently at the entrance. Akino landed behind the redhead, curiously peering down at what lay beneath the tower. The celestial tower you so wanted to climb, is it really an upside-down tower that starts on the top floor? Akino wondered, rubbing her chin. It's built from obsidian and ruby, Naruto said, noticing the dark walls and the crimson decorations and inlays that formed symbols and pentagrams. Naruto-sama, and Graphia? Akino noticed the silver-haired girl's absence. Right, hurry up. Naruto hurriedly opened the entrance as he crossed the threshold with Akino following just as quickly. He didn't want to run into an angry Graphia. Her eyes traveled across the completely white space of the room. There was nothing but a door in the middle. Akino took her hand and intertwined their fingers, looking at her with a raised eyebrow, but received a small pout in return. She smiled faintly before squeezing her hand and starting to walk toward the door, which she slowly opened while gazing in amazement at what seemed to be a completely different world. A desolate and mountainous place, it resembled the striking Grand Canyon found in the human world. Outside the tower, falling slowly, his eyes wandered around the striking place before looking down a little. When I find them, they'll wish they were dead, Graphia muttered, a vein throbbing in her cheek. A moment later, her expression shifted to one of concern. She knew this dangerous place, she had entered out of curiosity, and it had almost ended in her death. Had she not at least defeated the first guardian and conquered the first floor, she wouldn't have left that place alive. Currently, the power of those monsters must have skyrocketed. To put it simply, if Naruto were foolish enough to enter the tower, he would be killed in a matter of seconds by those soul-devouring beasts. I cannot allow this. Graphia summoned a magic circle to communicate with Surzex. She would inform him of this before acting. Yes, Naruto was foolish enough to go in, the last magical trail led him to the door. I sighed before continuing with the call. Celestial Tower. First floor. There is almost no life here, Akino said, looking only at the rocks and mountains. There was no trace of life, only insects from hell wandering beneath the rocks. You should have known, this place is, oh shit. Naruto stopped with a shocked look. Akino was worried about her king's actions, but she also felt it the next second and her surprise was evident in her wide eyes. Swoosh, crash, hee, food. Finally, after centuries of hunger, there's finally some food. Demonic and terrifying would be the right words. It had no skin, it looked as if it had been torn away, and its body was covered in exposed veins and red tissue like muscle and tendons. Two skeletal horns protruded above its head, forming a half-crown or some kind of halo of bone. The wings on its back were like that of pure bone, divided into 3 layers of vertebrae and of a colossal size, almost 20 meters long. Its eyes were a deep crimson, pupilless, with the sclera a pure black, like an abyss or darkness trapped within those orbs. Hands. More like claws with sharp, black nails. The feet, or hooves, were an intense, dark red, deeper than its body, and stained with dried blood. Naruto-sama. Akino almost vomited from the putrid stench of the demonic being. Naruto endured it and merely spat on the ground. Well, Akino, you'll have to hide, because things are about to get very bloody. Immediately, his magic power erupted around him, enveloping him like a second skin in an intense, dark crimson. But, Akino, just do it, Naruto ordered, staring at the monstrous being directly into those terrifying dead eyes. A smile split her red, cracked lips, revealing rows of sharp teeth like a grinder. Don't think I'll let my food get away, I don't give a damn what you think. Naruto unleashed a beam of destruction that traveled at great speeds. The guardian of the first floor watched the beam with amusement. Magical without even trying to dodge it. Boom! Akino had hidden herself. She didn't want to interfere in Naruto-sama's fight, though that didn't mean she wouldn't intervene when necessary. She might not be as powerful as her king, but she wasn't a complete fool who would just stand by and watch her king be killed. Passing through the curtain of black smoke, his reddish body was glimpsed while appearing to be unharmed by the previous attack. Such a pathetic attack wouldn't even scratch me, said the guard with a toothy grin. Naruto had a crazed grin on his lips. It's time to wear myself out until I collapse. I can finally unleash my magic left and right without holding back anymore. The ground beneath his feet sank into a deep crater, rocks began to levitate, and the aura surrounding his body seemed to increase in size and density. You brat dash, boom. There was an explosion of pure energy that threw dust everywhere and covered Naruto's body. A smile split the guardian's lips. That magical pressure of raw power was interesting to say the least, and the fact that a child possessed such power was stirring an unknown emotion within him. Laughing with apparent amusement, he approached the cloud of dust. Kid, I'll tell you my name, something very few people know. You've earned it by showing me something interesting. You can call me Enteritis. Emerging from the dust, his body covered in a thick layer of crimson energy, Naruto smiled with amusement at the name. Your creator must have been lazy when it came to names. Ha ha ha, right, he was too lazy for that. Right now my hunger will only be satiated with your mana. Enteritis ran her tongue over her lips with a hungry look. The large amounts of magic in that brat's body would fill him for several years and he would be absolutely without hunger. Naruto chuckled softly. I won't be devoured by anyone, if you think you can do it, go ahead. Swoosh. The redhead took off into the air with ferocious flapping wings. The simple impulse caused him to create a powerful ring of wind that expanded like a chain sequence of several more rings, forming a kind of ladder of rings one on top of the other. You will not escape. The guardian on the first floor didn't waste any time chasing him. He could kill him right now, but what was the fun in finishing him off so quickly? He wanted to take his sweet time with his prey. Akino peered out, watching from a distance as a red light briefly illuminated the sky in a reddish spot, then flashed in a blinding brilliance that moments later caused an explosion of energy that covered several kilometers around. She stood up, trying to pursue her king, but a hand on her shoulder stopped her. A chill ran down her spine and she carefully and slowly turned her face, being met by Graphia's cold and angry gaze. Hi Graphia, how's the weather? Akino trembled with a small squeal as she felt the hand tighten on her shoulder. Now they've really done it. Graphia rubbed her forehead before unfurling her wings and taking to the air. Wait here, I'll return with Naruto and together you'll both receive a reprimand for your actions. Swoosh! Akino sighed, wiping the sweat from her forehead. I'm afraid of Graphia's punishment. With Naruto, pow, bwag, damn, he's too strong. Physically speaking, he far surpasses me. But in magic, he's another story. Naruto threw a series of orbs of destruction the size of buildings, which traveled a distance of hundreds of meters in a single blink. With a smile, Enteritis received the attack head-on while preparing a punch with which he struck the magical attacks. Boom, boom. A sequence of explosions in rapid succession occurred at the moment of the collision. The guardian demon was completely covered by a column of black smoke. Swoosh! Ducking down even before the sound of takeoff, he narrowly avoided a kick that stirred the wind and even generated powerful air waves that shook the surroundings. Damn, one hit and you're out. Naruto moved through the air in a zigzag pattern, dodging as best he could the blows and attacks of his enemy who was clearly showing his advantage. Ha 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 ha. Boy, I must admit, you're a fun prey. He moved forward, arriving in less than 1/100th of a second to strike the redhead in the face, who evaded the attack with an annoyed look. Naruto opened his eyes as he saw a hoof about to hit his chest. He tried to move, but his body didn't react fast enough and he ended up receiving a blow that caused severe damage. Blood escaped from his mouth and shot off like a bullet towards some mountain in the distance, where it ended up embedded, causing more damage to his body. Was that all? The guardian demon had a disappointed face. Grunting, Naruto climbed out of the crater on the hillside, blood trickling from the corner of his lips. This isn't over. Rising into the air, he raised both hands, magic in great quantities emanating from his body in the form of rising red particles. A magic circle of. It formed in titanic proportions, covering almost 50 kilometers. Dude, you're a suicidal son of a bitch. That brat intended to unleash a powerful attack that would end in his death. For him, nothing serious would happen, he could withstand that lightning and much more. Naruto smiled, his hair casting a shadow over his bright red eyes. Who said this was a suicide attack? From the enormous circle emerged what appeared to be constructions of the power of destruction, enormous dragons, gigantic chimeras, immense birds, even a black-red phoenix. Thanks to the manga for giving me this idea. Naruto had a small smile. You use your magic creatively. But that won't be enough. I am the master of this floor, and your pathetic attempts will not defeat me. Grunting with its body expelling a kind of toxic gas, the skies filled with black clouds that formed in enormous sizes, covering a large part of the surroundings. Attack! Naruto pointed his finger at the guardian demon, giving the order that was followed by his creations who flew in the direction of their enemy. I always wanted to say that. Naruto smiled with a hint of amusement. Being surrounded by creatures created by the power of destruction had no effect on Enteritis. A smile threatened to split his lips, he stretched out his limbs and gestured with his arms toward all the creatures, a single word escaping his lips. It falls. Each and every one of the clouds expelled enormous lightning bolts, hundreds of them impacting the buildings of the pod, producing explosions that spanned hundreds of meters and almost reached a kilometer in radius. Covering his face from the furious winds that threatened to blow him away, Naruto observed the result of his enemy's attack. Kid, you have power, but it's not enough to beat me. He appeared in front of the redhead without a single scratch. Well, I have plenty of energy to spare and I'm not afraid to use it until I'm exhausted. A smile spread across his lips, the magical constructs regenerating from nothing, reforming as if they had never been destroyed. His face contorted in fury. You're starting to test my patience. So fast, you can't handle anything, crybaby. Naruto mocked, lowering his lower eyelid while sticking out his tongue. I'll kill you, no more games. Swoosh. A sequence of chain-like wind rings was created as the guardian demon took off at hypersonic speeds, crashing head-on into Naruto's creations. If I can't defeat him quickly, I just need to wear him down enough to deliver the final blow. Naruto walked away while summoning 3 more circles of the same size as the previous one, from which hundreds of thousands of his creations emerged. You brat! You have no idea how much I hate you, boom. I don't know and I don't care. Naruto chuckled slightly, an orb of destruction beginning to form in his hand from black and red particles. The magic compressed and continued moving toward the orb. Its attack should have been the size of half the moon, but it was being compressed. Vast amounts of magic kept accumulating within its orb, the air grew heavier, and a sense of danger spread through the atmosphere. Rah! Damn shit! Stop summoning so much trash. The guardian demon continued to unleash his fury, striking the magical constructs, but they only reformed and continued their attack, causing him to lose time that Naruto took advantage of. Almost there. Naruto closed one of his eyes, the heavy breathing escaping from his lips becoming more and more noticeable, sweat began to run down his forehead and his concentration was entirely on the orb in his hands. The first guardian's attacks grew increasingly ferocious, unleashing either powerful physical blows or magical attacks of great magnitude that did little to stop the enormous number of Naruto's creations. With a look somewhere between pain and exhaustion, Naruto smiled as he watched the completely black orb with blackish-red lightning flashing every few seconds. Hey bastard! This ends now. Naruto pointed the orb with his trembling hand in the direction of the guardian demon. Enteritis diverted his attention and sensed the imminent danger. What the redhead was holding was undoubtedly something dangerous that he was even struggling to hold. You won't stop me with that. He would dodge it, there was no doubt about that. The creatures of Pod surrounding him gathered, completely encircling him and restraining him as best they could. Their teeth ground together, the creatures seemed to increase their striking power, it was large enough to restrain him and hold him in place. For how long? The guardian demon wondered. Seconds would be the most he could feel. Naruto exhaled shakily. Eat this. Roaring with power, he unleashed his attack. These things won't be able to stop me for long, their attack won't be that fast, which will give me time to evade it and... Her eyes nearly popped out of their sockets, the orb covered the distance in what seemed like an instant, leaving only a trail in the air like a comet. The orb was in front of his eyes, the only thing that came out of his mouth were two words. Oh shit, Karikaroam. An explosion of cataclysmic proportions occurred, it seemed to be the end of this dimension because of how it exploded, the dark glow covering almost the entire world. When it was over, there was only a huge, deep black hole from which nothing could be seen. I think I overdid it. Naruto slowly descended, nearly exhausted from all the mana he had used, his reserves had been plundered, leaving him with only 10% of them. Lying on his back, he gazed at the sky with one eye closed. Ugh, I haven't completely exhausted my magic reserves yet. I was really looking forward to emptying them. Driving yourself to faint, Naruto, you really outdid yourself this time. Graphia's cold, icy voice distracted him. Turning her gaze back to the silver-haired woman, she nervously sweated at her expression. Graphia, how's everything? How's life treating you? Approaching the redhead, he let out a sigh. You'd better tell me where the guard on the first floor is. I don't really know, I guess it's over there. He pointed with his trembling finger at the gigantic hole. Graphia looked at the hole, then back at Naruto, then back at the hole again, before returning her gaze to the redhead. So, no, he's still alive. But he's very exhausted from protecting himself from my last attack. I can't stand the crazy things you and your brother do. Graphia rubbed her temples. Naruto chuckled. I'll give you the rest of my magic so it won't be so difficult for you to finish him off. He raised his hand, trembling visibly, emitting a red glow. A small, pure crimson sphere struck Graphia's chest, plunging into her body and being absorbed. Her eyes widened slightly. Such a lot of magic in a child. It all depends on you now. Naruto fell unconscious to the ground with his eyes completely closed. Take care of him, Graphia said without turning her face as she headed towards where she sensed the guardian's demonic essence. You didn't have to order me to do it, Akino murmured, placing Naruto's head on her thighs. So you want to double your magic reserves even more? Akino sighed. Naruto was only thinking about increasing his magic reserves. Looking into the distance for a moment, he glimpsed a huge mountain of ice being raised while icy winds could be seen. Is he angry? Akino wondered before turning her gaze back and focusing on her Narutosama. End of chapter. Physically speaking, Naruto is weak, but he can reinforce his body with magic to become more resilient and stronger. He could withstand 3 consecutive blows from the guardian of the first floor before his defenses become completely useless. Even if he manages to withstand blows, it doesn't mean he won't take damage. He will, but it will be greatly reduced. Naruto's power is focused more on magic, on attacks that are either pod or elemental attacks, some of which are well hidden. From now on he will begin to focus on developing his physical power, trying to cover his weaknesses so as not to suffer a near defeat like he did in this first confrontation. Chapter 4. Opening his eyes, he let out a groan of discomfort. "Well, it's about time you woke up." The familiar female voice, with its cold, familiar tone, made him jump slightly. "Ugh, Graphia, you finished off the guardian," said Naruto, getting up from his place on his bishop's comfortable lap. Graphia sighed, shaking her head. That was a part of his essence, something like a physical clone with a trace of his creator's true power. Naruto's eyes widened. That damn thing had almost literally destroyed him with just one kick of its hooves, and now they're telling him it wasn't even the real one. "Gee Graphia, come on, tell me this is a joke on your part and that you're getting revenge on me," Naruto said, sweat running down his cheek. He swallowed hard when he noticed the silver-haired girl's serious gaze. "This is no joke. To die on the first floor. What a day to start." Naruto muttered uncomfortably, a hint of weariness in his voice. He groaned in pain and clutched his right wrist, squeezing it tightly as his limb trembled. Akino grew worried, and moving from her position, she approached her king. "Naruto-sama." She exhaled white vapor mixed with something resembling blood, judging by the reddish hue emanating from her mouth. She gave her dear friend a weary smile. "Don't worry, Akino, it's nothing serious," Naruto assured her, one eye closed. His physical and magical exhaustion hadn't dissipated. She bit her lower lip, her concern for Naruto's health was growing. "You'll have to remain at rest for at least a full week." Graphia's cold voice caught Naruto's attention. "I don't think I can rest for a day with the guardian of the first floor wandering around. He's sure to find us and kill us the moment he does," Naruto said, succumbing to exhaustion. He rested his head back on Akino's lap, using it as a comfortable, soft cushion. It was reckless of him to enter the celestial tower so weak. He still lacked the power to even climb the first floor. "In fact, you can rest in this place. The curse of the first floor acts as a sort of advantage for those who wish to climb it. The guardian may be different, but the curse of this floor will remain the same." Graphia began to say this as she summoned a simple oak chair, in which she sat and crossed one leg over the other with her arms crossed beneath her breasts, shaking them slightly in the process. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "On the first floor, the guard cannot stray more than 100 kilometers from the door that leads to the second floor." Graphia paused, her expression thoughtful, before continuing. "It's safe to assume he could use large-scale ranged attacks, thereby taking out the intruders and eliminating them. Why hasn't that happened? I mean, if he's so powerful he could kill us so easily, but why waste his time?" Akino remarked with a curiously raised eyebrow. Naruto frowned. "For fun and for food." That caught both of their attention. Graphia sighed before speaking. "That's correct. Their hunger for mana and souls prevents them from quickly dispatching those who attempt to climb the tower. They also take their time to inflict physical or mental torture for their amusement and entertainment," Graphia said with a serious expression on her beautiful face that made Akino and Naruto's faces turn whiter for a moment. "Now I'm glad I only faced a clone," Naruto said wearily, his exhausted body once again screaming for rest. "How will we get out of here?" Akino frowned. She didn't want her king to continue with the idea of climbing this dangerous tower floor by floor. "That's not possible unless you conquer the floor by defeating its guardian. But since it's too powerful, that method will have to be discarded," Graphia said, looking seriously at Naruto. "By the way, Graphia, how do you know about the curse of the first floor?" Naruto looked at her seriously with his one open eye. The silver-haired woman rubbed her forearms, her gaze averted. "A while ago, I tried to climb the tower out of curiosity." Akino's eyes widened. "What? You tried to climb such a dangerous tower?" "I was very curious about this place back then, and besides, you're the fools trying to climb the tower. Anyway, we can try to find a way out of here," Graphia said, standing up as her seat disappeared in a magic circle. There's no other way to climb the tower or get out of it except by taking out its guardian. Naruto managed to murmur just low enough that they could barely hear him. The silver-haired woman bit her lower lip, her eyebrows arched. "We can't die here," she murmured, an icy aura enveloping her body, shards of ice beginning to cover the floor. She needed to think of a way to escape this place. Conquering the first floor was out of the question given the Guardian's overwhelming strength. "We have time to increase our strength. Grafia, help me and Akino train. If we become powerful enough, we can escape this place," Naruto said wearily. "You could barely keep a clone at bay, what makes you think it'll be any easier with the original?" Grafia's expression turned grim. Her duty was to protect her young master. She couldn't afford to send him to fight against that kind of monsters. It couldn't be allowed that he was hurt as he was for arriving late. It would not be forgiven to see him hurt. "That's right, you don't know. I've been increasing my magic reserve since I was 9. Now that I've depleted them, when I recover I'll have twice as much magic as I used in my battle. And if I deplete those same reserves again, when I recover I'll have twice as much. I'll be able to significantly increase my magic, with more powerful spells and enough training. We can definitely conquer the first floor." Naruto knew it. In his current state, he wouldn't even be able to tickle the guardian of this first floor. He needed to increase his strength, learn more spells, and develop his physique to the extreme. Perhaps he should take a page from Saror's training guide and do push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and run in extra heavy clothing for 3 hours straight each time. That would be a warm-up before his real training. Now he realized the need to balance things out a bit and not just focus on magic. Grafia sighed. There was no point in letting her emotions control her. What she needed was to think clearly and calmly. Thinking things through, Naruto's proposal wasn't unreasonable. If she could increase her strength and help him become stronger, they might at least be able to escape this place by conquering the first floor. On further thought, there was a small chance of conquering the first floor and escaping. For this to happen, the strength of the younger ones had to match, at a minimum, that of a supreme-class demon, and at most, it had to be similar to or approach the power of a super demon like Surzex. He glanced sideways at the redhead and the violet-eyed girl for a moment, his hand rising to his chin as she gained a thoughtful expression. "Good. I'll train both you and Akino, and if we manage to get out of here alive, I'll make sure to give you a punishment strong enough to teach you a lesson. And I hope you brought food because there's nothing here but insects from hell," Grafia said, raising an eyebrow, waiting for a response from Naruto or Akino. "I have enough supplies to last at least a few years, but I'm not a very good cook," Naruto whispered wearily with a nervous smile. She sighed. "I'll teach you how to cook properly as part of your training. For now, focus on resting. When you're recovered, we'll train, and believe me, I won't be gentle." "Shit." Naruto swallowed. Akino stroked Naruto's hair with a smile. "I'll take very good care of you, Naruto-sama. You don't need to worry." The redhead didn't get a good feeling from his bishop's smile. He wanted to refuse, but decided it was better to close his eyes again. First he needed to rest, then he could complain. Half a month later, panting heavily, a thick layer of sweat covered her body, soaking her clothes which felt heavier with it. Her hair plastered to her forehead, her lungs burned, and the muscles in her limbs screamed for rest. She felt extremely hot in her extremities and every muscle in her body. "You have 5 minutes to rest, then we'll continue with training," Grafia said from her place on her levitating seat above a magic circle. "At least I'm not the only one suffering," Naruto muttered, throwing himself face down on the ground. Glancing to the side, he observed a panting Akino, sweat dripping from every pore of her body. She gave him a heated look at his comment. Sitting on the ground, Naruto sighed with a tired grimace. He had been doing a mix of physical and magical training imposed by Grafia, which helped him to empty his magic reserves faster, learn to control them better, and develop his stamina and strength. He would have to find a way to increase his speed. He had some ideas that might help, but for now he would just focus on what Grafia had been instructing him on. There was no need to rush things, but even my growth here is very similar. Naruto clenched his hand into a fist, producing a small crack from the force exerted, his limb trembling momentarily from exhaustion. His physical development also worked in a way similar to his magic. His stamina doubled the more he exhausted himself. He had tested his theory, he had torn muscles and fractured bones from training, rested for almost a week, and when he woke up he was more resilient and stronger. He continued to apply the same theory to almost everything, and the results were nearly identical. The gradual healing of his minor training injuries led him to develop a small regenerative ability, not very noticeable, but very useful. This allowed him to recover more quickly from exertion and return to training, and it also helped that small cuts and wounds healed in a matter of minutes. Taking advantage of all this, he was progressing at an incredible rate in his training. Of course, Graphia tried to keep him from overexerting himself. But Naruto didn't care about his condition after training, he kept pushing himself and wouldn't stop until he achieved his goal. He also thought of himself as an idiot for not preparing enough. If only I were more powerful and less reckless. Naruto sighed, his expression angry with himself. Shaking her head, she erased her thoughts. Now she didn't need to drown in the guilt she felt. Time's up. He cursed in his mind for having so little rest. Location not disclosed. Seated on a huge throne was the same creature that Naruto had fought, the most noticeable difference being that this one was almost 5 meters tall. A deep exhalation revealed a strange purple gas emanating from his jaws. I hate being reduced to a useless first-floor guard. Damn trash. I was known on the upper floors, I was feared and revered. And now I've been reduced to this powerless shit. The dark, demonic voice of the being emerged with an immeasurable amount of fury. He took a moment to calm his fury. A smile parted his lips soon after, he remembered the invading little shits. Some entertainment had arrived, he could amuse himself with that interesting brat. The blood staining his dark claws gave him a feeling of pleasure. She imagined breaking its jaw with her hooves, crushing its limbs, gouging out its eyes and setting fire to its empty sockets. Just thinking about it, excitement filled him. Hee hee ha 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 ha. Yes. That's what I'll do. I'll torture him badly and devour his soul while I make him watch as I skin those women alive who are with him. They seemed important to him, and that will add to his suffering. Ha 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 ha. He laughed maniacally as he began to feel extreme excitement and arousal. Too bad he didn't have a penis, otherwise he'd rape those women in front of that brat before sending him to hell. Wait, they were already in hell. He laughed maniacally again, his hand covering his eyes. 3 months later, Naruto sat within a crimson magic circle in the air, using it as a seat, a spellbook he was learning in his hands. He was grateful to pack away the hundreds of books on magic and spells his parents had given him, they were taken from their personal library. She was currently learning flight magic. She wanted to learn to levitate without her wings, the time it took to raise them was significant. She needed immediate flight so she wouldn't depend on them. Time was of the essence in battle, any single second could cost her her life. Looking at the book one last time, he closed it with one hand before sending it back to its pocket dimension in his backpack through a magic circle that slowly consumed it. He stood up and examined his hands carefully before sighing, having noticed something. I'm growing, she murmured, her clothes were getting tighter and more of her body was showing. A dark blur drifted through the air before crashing into the distracted redhead. Kaya. Naruto-sama, I did it. Akino squealed with excitement, hugging her king tightly. At this moment Naruto was staring blankly, Akino was squeezing the life out of him with a tight hug as they flew through the air with her flapping her demonic wings. Finally I can use it more smoothly. Naruto's bones creaked slightly. What the hell? Akino's strength is much greater than I imagined. I couldn't believe that her friend was so strong that even after so much physical training, she could still make her bones crack. Oh well, it's nice that you can use it, it makes me happy that you dash. Crash. Naruto smiled nervously with his eyes closed as a bead of sweat trickled down his cheek. I'm starting to get angry at that bastard guardian. Something had flown past them at high speed. As Akino was descending to the ground they noticed when it crashed at a close distance, about 10 meters away, a considerable amount of dust had been raised. Akino was irritated, a vein throbbing in her cheek. Naruto-sama, let me handle this garbage myself. You shouldn't waste your strength on such a waste. She wouldn't say it, but she also needed to know his current strength level. He sighed as he freed himself from the embrace before levitating on his wings. Fine, all yours, but if you're in trouble, I'll get in. He began to move away with a simple flap of his wings that stirred the wind before taking off, leaving a ring of wind in his wake. Kakik. Don't even think I'll let anyone get away from me. A small demonic being laughed happily. He was going to have fun massacring these intruders. His master had ordered him to capture them and take them as a snack and entertainment. Bzzzt. A yellow ray grazed the cheek of the little demon, a fine cut was seen as a trickle of dark purple blood dripped. Akino placed her hand on her cheek, a calm smile on her lips as she slightly opened her bright eyes. Era, you little trash, I won't let my master waste his precious time with someone so pathetic, Akino said with a bigger smile. The little demon's face contorted in fury as his eyes shone with pure red, his pupils no longer visible in his orbs. You fucking bitch. How dare you touch me, I don't touch shit. Akino was enveloped in lightning, black clouds began to form in a circular shape with flashing lightning. His angry gaze focused solely on this little mixed-breed devil. This bitch would die, her virgin blood would delight her master. Be a good toy and don't die so quickly, that would disappoint me a lot. Krakacaron. A blinding yellow lightning bolt struck from the sky, its immense size and speed befitting its size. The attack completely engulfed the demon's body before it exploded on the ground, scorching it as the surrounding rocks turned a burnt black. Akino never took her eyes off her enemy's smoke-covered form, taking them off could mean giving her opponent an advantage. Instead, she prepared her next attack by gathering magic in her hands as she rose into the air. Die! Appearing behind the dark-haired woman, the demon, with a dark dagger in hand, prepared to stab her in the spine. She had a small smile. You're very slow. Bzzzt. Gah! Erg! Blood escaped from his mouth, his chest was stabbed by a whitish, spear-shaped ray, causing him more pain. He would recognize that power. Damn it! I won't die from this weakling attack from someone like you. A huge smile spread across his lips. I don't want to kill you so quickly. The dark clouds grew larger, and the stormy, uncontrollable amount of lightning flashed almost blindingly across the sky before crashing down like thunder, loud and with an explosive impact that shattered rocks and burned everything it touched. In the midst of that attack was the little demon, its body growing darker with each passing moment from the severe burns. Akino never stopped her attack, she increased the magic she used and summoned more lightning through magic circles. With Naruto, sitting on a hill was the redhead with a book in his hand, reading before taking a brief look at where Akino was. He glimpsed the lightning falling and causing severe explosions that raised too much dust. Maybe I can learn to use those buffs like in those games. Naruto closed his book for a second before shrugging, he'd try it later. In the distance, the shower of lightning crashed down intensely. Back with Akino, so your lord couldn't send someone stronger? You're too weak. Akino crossed her arms with a small pout, her Naruto-sama wouldn't see how much she had improved if her opponent was too weak. Kakik, you damn stupid girl. You brought it on yourself. His wounds were closing as his size increased, the color of his skin turned a deep blue as two pairs of dark horns, one pair larger than the other, grew on his forehead and on one side of his head, curving upwards and to the sides. This is more interesting. Akino smiled before moving to the side. Swoosh! The sound of the powerful movement, as if the sky were being split open, echoed as he narrowly avoided a swipe. The claws released a purple gas as the demon's eyes drilled into his soul. Stepping aside, she avoided a swipe, ducking, she let an elbow pass over her head, the wind whipped her hair as she backed away, dodging a knee strike. Sparks crackled at her fingertips, a spear of white lightning slowly forming. Kakik, not bad. He calmly dodged a slash before launching his attack, his claws clashing with the spear. His greater strength helped him, and with a push, he made her lose her balance. He lunged in a swift movement with a bloodthirsty smile. You should be less predictable. Akino ducked, dodging the attack, positioning herself to throw her spear, and hurled it with a single movement at incredible speed. Growling angrily, he dodged the attack by moving backward and tilting his body as the lightning spear flew past him, eventually traveling a great distance and crashing into a distant mountain in an explosion. You're annoying. Gathering fire in his hands, a sphere of flames formed and he threw it at the violet-eyed girl before beginning to form more spheres of fire which he also ended up throwing in a rain of attacks. She clicked her tongue in annoyance, magic gathered around her and a magic circle formed in front of her. First of all the fire spheres disappeared because of a tiny blackish-red ball the size of a marble. Naruto-sama, there's no need to get your hands dirty with this garbage. Akino sighed, watching the red-haired newcomer levitate beside her with one finger outstretched. Meh, I was bored, and since you were wasting time having fun, I decided to end this so I could get back to training. Naruto shrugged. The demon let out a deep laugh at the arrival of Gremory. Fool. Someone who just disappear. Naruto clenched his hand into a fist as the demon began to vanish into red particles. What the hell? Ag. Damn you, what have you done to me? Naruto moved his hand like a mouth, pretending to speak. Oh, what have you done to me? Stop it. Blah blah blah, it's boring wasting energy explaining. Akino pouted. Humph, Naruto-sama, this was my fight. Hey, you can face more of those useless guys later. That crazy bastard guardian will apparently keep sending his lackeys. Naruto started walking away in the direction of his small refuge. Humph. Akino crossed her arms, following the redhead with an angry look. I was just starting to have fun. 8.5 months later. Boom, pam, bzzzt, boom. A dark blur flew through the air, struck by a shockwave. The blur traveled a great distance before descending and crashing to the ground, leaving a destructive trail before coming to a stop. The next instant, the dust rose into the air, forming a cloud about 15 meters high. Rising from his backward position, he spat bloody saliva directly onto the ground in a small puddle. He dusted off his clothes before rising with the help of his wings. His target was in the air, simply floating with its arms crossed and a relaxed expression. With a smile, he took off from his place as a gap was left in the dust and his silhouette passed through a ring of wind, shaking the dust shortly after his swift movement. Swoosh, boom, bam. A punch was blocked by his attacker's forearm before he followed up with a spinning kick that his opponent stopped effortlessly with his knee. This is kind of funny. A white beam passed by one side of his body that would have hit him had he not leaned over. Stay still, Naruto-sama, I just want to show you my deep love for you. Akino smiled violently, her hands rising before she lowered them as a huge number of electric arrows came hurtling down with a simple crack. No thanks, I prefer your other show of love, wilder and less destructive. Naruto winked at his bishop with a small smile before raising a hand palm up and then closing it into a fist. A transparent crimson dome formed around him, completely covering his body and protecting him from attacks. Each arrow bounced off the magic shield and fell harmlessly to the ground before bursting into and scattering into beams. A slight blush covered her cheeks. Let yourself be loved, Naruto-sama. Not a chance. Naruto extended his shield by almost 30 meters, the rain of arrows didn't stop until Akino pouted and halted her attack. Humph, then I'll use the love ray on you. Akino raised both hands to the sky, a magic circle was created as sparks fluttered around its circumference. His magic has increased since then. Naruto focused on the enormous circle that measured about 100 meters. During training, Akino's magical reserve skyrocketed. Thanks to the books she brought with her, she helped her bishop learn more spells. Although she only used lightning spells, she could also use healing magic. Naruto was getting more and more excited. His magical reserves at this moment, were insane. He didn't know exactly how much magic he had. Grafia had mentioned that he was a monster of magical energy, not only because of how gigantic his magic was, but also because of its growth rate. He trained together with Akino, and sometimes Grafia joined them. Today was one of those days when they practiced together to see how much they had improved. Honestly, Naruto was happy with his results. He no longer had to worry about Akino's strength. Before, she could crush his bones, but now he only needed one hand to defeat her. And to make things even more exciting, Naruto, who had studied the magic books he had brought, learned to manipulate gravity and a little about runes. He restricted himself in both strength and speed. His magic was so ridiculously immense that any seal he used would only break as soon as he awoke, when his reserves doubled again. He managed to physically restrain himself and found a way to exhaust all his magic. Although he had to empty his reserves, he didn't do it very often because of the control he had to maintain. Continuing with the fight, Naruto observed the gigantic amount of lightning that was accumulating in the center. I could use a spell and counter his attack with 10 times the power of the original, I could even do it with 100 times the power. But that's no fun. Naruto smiled before dispelling his shield. Receive my love, Naruto-sama. A beam of light, large enough to cover a small village, shot out of the circle as it sailed and struck the redhead directly, sending him crashing to the ground where an explosion of almost 100 meters was the result of the collision. Akino had a blush on her cheeks. Emerging from the dust, Naruto waved his hand, clearing the smoke from his body, while his tattered clothes barely covered his body. Naruto frowned. I need clothes that won't tear so easily. Licking her lips, Akino admired her king's body. Oh Naruto-sama, your beautiful body is becoming even more sensual. The redhead's body was beginning to show toning, his abs were just starting to form, and his muscles were becoming more defined. Akino, focus on the battle. Naruto shot off like a bullet as the ground cracked from the force used in the redhead's legs to take off into the skies. Era. The violet-eyed girl ducked, dodging a fist, before pushing the redhead's forearm with her palm, then moved again to avoid being hit by a knee strike. \W /W 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 Some fun has arrived. That bastard won't wait any longer to make his move, the brat will have serious difficulties finishing off that little shit. He, don't disappoint me, Gremory boy. The deep, demonic voice echoed in that dark, unlit place. Before his yellow eyes was a distortion in space through which he was watching a certain redhead train before the image changed to a certain being on his throne with an enraged look. Maybe you're the new master, or just another piece of trash in the pile. End of chapter. If this chapter is very boring, I apologize, my inspiration has been coming and going at the wrong times. When I want to write, inspiration doesn't come, when I'm resting, it comes, and when I do write, I get so caught up in it that sometimes I don't write anything at all. I'll leave you with some options to help me decide how you want me to update this fanfic. A. As before, weekly or monthly updates with 5,000 or 6,000 words per chapter. B. Shorter deadline of between 2 to a maximum of 4 days with 3,000 4,000 words per chapter. C. Fuck you, Azar, I decide, leave your opinion in the comments. I want to know it. XD. I hate my school, but I love my teacher #no homo. Although I would love to break the rules with my English teacher, she's blonde, but she already has a boyfriend, now I hate my life. Chapter 5. Naruto gasped sharply before coughing up a mouthful of blood. His body was riddled with severe wounds, one eye swollen shut as blood trickled down to his chin. His right limb was missing, blood dripping from the stump. He stood in the middle of a crater that stretched for miles, its floor a charred black. Molten rock, more like lava than anything else, was scattered about. Looking with his eye towards his right side he found Akino with wounds while she was also panting, but compared to him she was in better condition since she did not have such serious wounds and only had superficial cuts with some burns. Graphia, on the other hand, had her legs trembling slightly, and a dark red spear protruded from her stomach, from which blood dripped from the tip that emerged from the front of her stomach. How did all this happen? Naruto groaned in pain, trying to get up, making a deep effort but failing. Some time ago. 2 hours earlier. Taking his rest peacefully, he lay there on a hill while reading a book that was held in his left hand. His current outfit consisted of a simple crimson shirt with black trousers and dark red and white dress shoes. Naruto had finished his daily routine about an hour ago, and since he had nothing better to do, he started reading a book on basic healing magic. He wanted to be able to heal his allies' wounds. In the future, he might complete his retinue, and he needed to help them get started. Learning the basics wasn't so difficult, what was difficult was putting it into practice. I couldn't just tell its magic that I healed the wounds just like that, I needed. He had a certain amount of control over his magic for that. Reading and taking the time to practice afterwards as much as he wanted, that's how he handled it during that year he was training, apart from being suicidal with physical things and pushing them to the extreme. So far, he can cast spells of various types of magic, some basic and others more advanced. His main focus, however, is on creation magic. If he can master it, he won't need to worry about food, he can create it and anything else, including the necessary materials and objects. He can even make any kind of clothing. Just thinking about it thrilled him. Of course, there were drawbacks. He had to know exactly what he wanted to create. Without a complete and perfect understanding of his intentions, it wouldn't work. It was extremely complicated, and it took a long time to learn its components and how each element functioned. This led him to create a spell that took a full month to perfect. It allowed him to know how anything worked, whether it was his biology, what he needed, his weaknesses, strengths, etc. It had other functions, like knowing the location of living beings within a certain radius. The important thing was that he no longer had to worry so much, although the first few times he used it, it gave him a terrible headache. He called it omniscient power. A simple touch was all it took to know everything about anything. The more he used it, the more accustomed he became to it, and the pains diminished. Now all he needed to do was learn and understand the magic of creation, and he would stop wondering when his food would run out. The only drawback was that creation magic was completely abhorred by his kind, since they considered it a type of white magic because, in creating life, it required mana of a divine nature or one that wasn't dark and demonic. This didn't stop Naruto from applying it through various methods. His creation magic was now somewhat different from that of his kind, his own demonic nature transforming it into dark magic or demonized magic, so to speak. He closed the book in his hand and sent it to his pocket dimension before summoning another book, a dark red book with purple details and a pentagram in the center surrounded by runic letters. He calmly opened the book and observed the pages filled with information and images. They were drawings made with the power of thought, something like copying a realistic image and magically pasting it onto a sheet of paper. Here he kept all the information about the objects he could create so far. It contained a description of the object and a magic circle surrounded by runes, which served to create the written object. He had some difficulty writing all the runes, but he was satisfied with his book. You could say it had infinite pages. In fact, by putting magic into the cover of the book, more pages were created, depending on the amount of magic used. Even though they are runes, he came up with the idea of calling them seals. It was more convenient for him. Flipping through the pages, which by the way seemed to have no end and the thickness of the book didn't seem to increase either, Naruto came to a specific sheet that contained information about some demons he had killed. The concept of giving something life, or creating something with life, was still confusing to him. Well, that something didn't have a soul, at least not yet. He placed his hand over the circle and imbued a large amount of mana into it. Well, for him it was barely a drop from his vast magical reserves, but for a high-class demon it would exhaust all his magic and cause him to collapse. Before their eyes, on the ground, the same circle opened up through which a body began to form from small red flashes. After several seconds, the circle faded, revealing a tiny demon with reddish skin, pointed ears, and red eyes without pupils. The little demon knelt down, lowering his gaze. "My lord." Naruto sweated, blushing, before rubbing his cheek with a finger. "My first living creation. I feel like some kind of demon king creating his subjects." He shook his head and sent the book in his hand back to its pocket dimension. "Alright, listen, kid, you've got to take care of some trash." Naruto summoned a map in his hand, inwardly chuckling with a wicked grin. He felt a twinge of excitement at being the one to send his creation on a mission. Giving orders felt better than he expected. "My creator, Lord, whatever you ask of me I will do." Okay, it's time to clean the first floor." A magic circle over 70 meters in diameter formed on the floor, and from it hundreds of small demons began to appear. The location of the trash is marked on the map. Naruto threw the map in the direction of the first demon he created, who caught it in his hand even while kneeling. "You have an army at your disposal. Take care of the trash. I hope you don't disappoint me." "Understood, my lord, we will not fail you." The first demon created stood up and spread his wings, with the others copying his action, and all of them taking off towards the heavens. When everyone was gone, Naruto collapsed to the ground, laughing uproariously. "Ha ha ha, I can't believe it, power really is addictive." Naruto turned his back, his eyes glowing a deep crimson, as he raised his hand and gazed at it with those demonic eyes. He clenched his hand into a fist and smiled calmly. If I want to survive, I have to finish off that goat-legged bastard. Naruto lay back on the ground, his arms crossed behind his head, his eyes slowly closing. And it has to be as soon as possible, or we'll all die without putting up a fight. Naruto began to breathe calmly, starting to fall asleep with a relaxed smile, completely unaware of what was about to begin. 1 hour later, boom, bzzzt, crash, boom, flush, slash, splash. Naruto opened his eyes before his brows furrowed at what was happening. Explosions were occurring, and demonic blood was raining down everywhere. Looking up, he watched his bishop unleash a massive barrage of lightning spears before she herself clasped her hands together and created a spear the size of an adult, then hurled it with explosive speed. The enormous spear sliced through one demon before exploding the head of another and finally bursting into a dome of uncontrollable electricity that continued to expand for tens of meters. I guess Goat's feet got impatient and ended up throwing everything away. Naruto stood up and dusted himself off. She focused on the countless different demons in the air, with which Akino was playing. She called it electrocuting her prey until it was nothing but pork rinds. Naruto sighed as he summoned his trusty personal book, quickly flipping through the pages before stopping at one. Moving his hand magically directly to the seal, he instantly infused it with an immeasurable amount of mana that increased with each passing second until it reached at least half a minute. That will be enough. Naruto stopped, his body, which was being covered by the magical aura of his demonic nature, slowly began to fade away. A magic circle of colossal size formed in the air, thousands of small demons began to appear with their wings displayed in all their splendor. Clean up the mess, Naruto said with a cold stare. His creations lowered their gaze before charging like madmen in the direction of the other demons. That pesky garbage man won't stay quiet, so I'll get everything ready. The redhead leaped several meters before taking off like a bullet with a powerful roar in the air. A small smile formed on his lips as he zigzagged through the demons, evading their attacks and dodging their magical projectiles. Swoosh! What are you doing here? Naruto asked without looking to his side. Era, is Naruto-sama angry with me? Akino smiled mockingly. You're annoying, just answer the question. Naruto increased his speed, but the dark-haired girl matched it. Fufu, I'm just protecting my beloved king. I thought you were having fun back there, Naruto said before, suddenly stopping and looking down with a cold stare. Era, don't be jealous, my fun time isn't as important as staying by your side, Akino replied with a smile. Naruto said nothing and simply created an orb of destruction in his hand before slowly letting it fall from his palm. I don't understand what you mean, but Goat's feet is preparing something. Grafia is very busy, from what I can tell. Naruto watched as the tiny orb fell at great speed before it hit the ground. Should I go and lend him a hand? There's no need. A red glow began to spread intensely before a blackish-red pillar suddenly erupted and began to expand at great speed. Come on, we have to get off the radar. Naruto took off with Akino following him. Swoosh, what am I taking you so long for? Naruto asked. A minor setback from dealing with a clone. Grafia replied coldly, she had dealt with a clone of the Guardian without much difficulty. Alright, now we need to move before he finds us and prepares something, Naruto said with a serious expression. The damned Guardian was becoming more active, every day he sent an army to capture them and take them away. Because of this, they were constantly on the move, constantly moving further away from where his lair might be. Wait, something strange is happening. Grafia stopped, staring at the air with a calculating look. The air was saturated with magical energy, very dense and dark, as far as she could feel. Naruto's eyes widened. Spatial distortion. Oh crap. Space fluctuated in circular waves as if water were rippling, in this case, it was space itself. A crimson chain shot out at great speed, entangling itself around Naruto's waist, who groaned, struggling to avoid being dragged along. Hey, girls, looks like I'll be a little busy, I can't hold out for long. Naruto took the chain in his hands, veins bulging as he grunted, trying to pull it without much success. A sudden, forceful tug from the other end surprised him and moved him as if his strength didn't even exist. Naruto-sama. I won't let him go. Akino charged and also gripped the chain with her strength. being equally ignored by the power behind the other end. Grafia moved her hand and in a simple motion several ice stakes shot out like bullets in the direction of the distortion as they passed over Naruto and Akino. She shot out with extreme speed and grabbed the chain before they were dragged away. The silver-haired woman's strength seemed to work as she stopped the advance a few meters from the distortion. Sooner or later that bastard would get tired of waiting, Naruto muttered, blood trickling down the edge of his lips. The chain is cursed, your magic will be drained if this continues, Grafia said, pulling hard on the chain to prevent Naruto from being dragged away. His magic was also being drained just from holding the chain. I don't know if it's good or bad, I don't feel much difference, Naruto said casually as he wiped the blood from his lips. He didn't care that his magic was being drained, it didn't dent his gigantic reserves. Grafia opened her mouth to reply, but fell silent as the chain trembled with tension. The pull from the other end became 3 times stronger, and Grafia couldn't stop the advance. She, too, began to be dragged along. Sweat dripped from her forehead, and she closed one eye as her arms shook from the strain of exerting far more force than she was used to. It seems I can't stop it. Grafia sighed as the pull from the other end simply carried her along with Naruto and Akino as if nothing had happened. \W /W 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 Naruto groaned in pain, his throat being crushed by the powerful force of the guardian before him, who, by the way, was looking at him with a decidedly unhappy expression. The chain prevented him from moving, as it was coiled from his waist to his feet. Grafia stared coldly at the bastard holding her young master by the throat, magic beginning to build in her right hand. Akino's body was crackling with uncontrollable lightning, her eyes seemed empty, her hair casting shadows, her sinister, emotionless gaze adding a dark touch. Take your filthy hands off Naruto-sama. I'll cut off your limbs if you don't, Akino said, tilting her head slightly. Sparks even flew from her eyes for a moment. The guard raised an eyebrow. Ha 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 ha. You little brat, you don't just have to talk pure bullshit, you have to demonstrate your power with your actions, he sneered as he squeezed the redhead's throat tighter, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. I will kill you, I will definitely kill you and cut off your head. Akino's voice contained a coldness that made her sound like a corpse. Don't rush into anything, Grafia said, without taking her cold, murderous gaze off the aberrant and horrible face of that thing. Naruto opened one of his eyes with a mocking smile. What's funny? The guard looked at him in confusion. I am the bomb. Her body glowed, covered in a crimson-red aura that shone, momentarily blinding everyone. Boom! Rising up to the gray clouds, a pillar of black-red energy rose up, completely covering a somewhat destroyed castle. Now that structure was non-existent due to the sudden release of power. A huge amount of black smoke covered the entire place, and out of the smoke came Naruto with his clothes torn while sighing at not seeing his enemy. He must be somewhere else, at least he was no longer imprisoned. 2 magic circles appeared on either side of them, and Grafia and Akino emerged from them. The dark-haired woman took the redhead by the shoulders and began to examine him with her empty eyes. In the depths of those orbs, white sparks seemed to flash.